We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Oh, everybody, welcome to Victory Never Sleeps.
Folk builder Nicholas Rice, filling in for the Ericksons. A little bit while the rest of them settle in the land of victory. So we hope that you guys don't mind, but we have done a little bit of a takeover. And with Baldur's Hof being a little bit feral, we had to spice it up a little bit. So we're going to be here to welcome you to tonight's awesome episode. Just to get started, we are going to remind you that Winter Nights is this weekend in Sigerheim, and tickets are still available at runestone.org, and you're going to see the Alshira there, and the Ericksons are there, and Nick will be there, and I'm going to be there, and you all should be there. So definitely go over to runestone.org and get your tickets for Winter Nights. Nick, what else we got going on this month or next month coming up?
Oh, we got all kinds of stuff going up. I'm going to start by just making sure y'all remember that we are streaming live on Twitter, VK, Odyssey, Entropy, Rumble, and brand new, as of last week, we are on Twitch. Of course, all of those links are in the description. And, of course, you got to make sure you like, share, and subscribe as always. But as you said, what do we got coming up next month? Well, we have the Feast of the Einherjar in South Dakota.
Yes, South Dakota, not to be confused with the Best Dakota, which is just north of that. You're going to go a little bit south from the Best Dakota down there. And that is where we're going to have the Feast of the Einherjar, which is going to be hosted by the Sigtyr Kindred. Come out to that. Tickets are also available at runestone.org. That's going to be a great event. We're going to have the McNallans there helping us celebrate the Feast of the Einherjar. I'm going to be there. A majority of the Baldur's Hof leadership is going to be there. We've got an amazing venue that's going to be just amazing. We've got a huge feast hall. We've got accommodations for everybody who could possibly want to attend. So definitely go to runestone.org, go to the Feast of the Einherjar, and get your tickets for that. It is definitely an event you don't want to miss. Go the Erlinson is going to be doing our bloat to the Einherjar this year. So make sure that you get your ticket, because that is definitely something that you don't want to miss. So definitely go for that as well. Perfect. What else we got going on?
Well, that's about it right now on the schedule for all the big events and such. But, of course, we have all kinds of stuff going on in all of the Hofs. And we're going to stop here for a second. $5, Zach Phelps. Hail Witan, Callahan. Hail Nick Rice. I appreciate it, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Zach. So what's going on in the AFA, we've got some amazing websites. So the first website you need to check out is going to be runestone.org, right? And then you need to figure out where you're at in that whole district function that we've got, because we've got Odin's Hof District, we've got Baldur's Hof District, we've got Thor's Hof District, we've got Njord's Hof District, and every single one of them has their own website. And on that website, there's this handy dandy calendar that you can click on, and you can look and see what's going on in your state. If you, for some reason, can't get on that calendar, or you just want to talk to somebody, because we would love to talk to you, contact your folk builder which can also be found on the website. And they can tell you everything that's going on in your area as well and get you connected with all the folk and all of the amazing leadership with all of the amazing things going on. There is something going on every single weekend in the AFA. There's something going on just about every single day in the AFA, whether it's a book study or a women's group or a men's group or a district meeting or the elderly meeting or Victory Never Sleeps every Wednesday or a moot all over the country. You can definitely find links to all of that and contacts for all of that.
Absolutely. And again, we got Ronald Blake donating $50. He donates week in and week out. Ronald, we really appreciate you, and we know that you're very supportive, and we couldn't do it without you, buddy.
Yes, thank you, Ronald. We appreciate you each and every week. We appreciate your support.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know we don't know exactly how long we're going to be on here, how long we're going to be allowed on here before Matt kicks us off. So we got a few questions here to get us started, see how many we can get through. If they're related to me and Brandy, we might not get to them if we get too many and Matt kicks us off. But if they're in general, we'll carry them over from Matt. He'll have a few good ones. We're going to start.
Well, if they don't get to the questions that particularly pertain to us before we're kicked off the program tonight, because the real stars are going to be coming on in a little bit to talk about the topic. So if we get kicked off early, they can always just come talk to us on MeWe, because that is the best place to find anybody and anything that's AFA related. So if you're a member and you don't have a MeWe account, you need to get with your folk builder, find out how to do that, and get involved on MeWe. So we have all kinds of groups. You've got the homesteading groups on there. You've got the parenting groups on there, spiritual excellence, physical excellence. The best group on MeWe is going to be the Baldershoff Folk group, where we have nightly dinner wars and we talk about all things nonsense and have a good time, build a lot of frith, get to know each other. So all of your best friends are MeWe. Please make sure you get on MeWe and join us.
Absolutely. And I do want to interrupt again. We got Sarah donating $5. Hey, Brandy, you're looking amazing. And nice hat, Nick. We really appreciate it, Sarah.
Sarah's amazing. So people don't realize just how much Sarah does that's seen and not seen. So she does things with the elderly group. She helps me with the book studies, and anybody who's ever done the book studies, the women's book studies with me, you have to have a lot of patience, because I jump into a rabbit hole and then I dig another rabbit hole and then I do another rabbit hole, and it takes forever. And she's so patient, and every once in a while she'll dangle the carrot for me to get back on track and we can weave our way back to where we're supposed to be. But she does so much stuff. So if you are in Wisconsin, get a hold of folk builder Sarah Alt, because she is involved with so many different things and she's got so much good information. So if you have any questions about the AFA in general, especially in Wisconsin or Baldershoff district, please make sure you get a hold of Sarah Alt, salt@runestone.org.
Absolutely. And I'll just throw out, she's a big help to me as well. She's the one who adds all of the moot pictures and calendar events to the Baldershoff site. Plus, she helps out on the runestone. She's the one who compiles the runestone for Thorshoff and normally Baldershoff. So she's a big help, and we couldn't do it without her as well. So we definitely got a few questions. This first one was texted to me early before the show. That's how you get on the show first if you want to do it. Send me a text, send me an email. Stian asks, So Stian asks us, Witan Callahan, what was your favorite part of North Dakota Winter Nights, and why should folks join us next year?
All right. So the best part of Winter Nights in North Dakota was that it was in the best Dakota. I got to go home for a weekend and see my family, literally see family and all of my best friends out there. So it was awesome. We had a lot of people. We had people come from Minnesota. We had people come from all over North Dakota. I saw a lot of friends I haven't seen in a while. We had previous members that came. We had current members that came. We had people who were just interested come. So it was kind of an open event for people to really get a taste of what it's like to celebrate an event and a holiday with the AFA. It was really, really awesome. So we had a really great little space that was big enough for all of us, and it was just such a tight-knit group of people, and everybody knew everybody, so everybody was super comfortable. We had people from Montana come out there. We had good food. We Folk Builder Stian Penner did a really good bloat for us. We did Winter Nights bloat, and we did Sumble as well. And then we spent a lot of time in the hot tub and swimming with the kids. So that is always a good time. Anytime that I can incorporate some hot tub into an event, I'm down with that. Hot tub Sumble's a thing. Ask around. It's real. But I think my favorite part of Winter Nights was actually spending the holiday with my brother. And listening to his experience during bloat was really powerful. He had a really, really good spiritual experience, and we talked about it afterwards. And that's really meaningful when you can hold bloat and you can see people's reactions to that spiritual experience. You can see them cry. Sometimes you'll see them laugh. Sometimes you just see it in their eyes. But to talk to them afterwards and hear about what they experienced at that moment is always really special. As a Gythia, that's really special to me. So I think that was probably my favorite part of Winter Nights in North Dakota, other than just being in the best Dakota.
Yeah, I do love Dakota. It was amazing when I was moving from Illinois. After my mom passed, I knew I was moving, and I was literally 50-50 moving to the Dakotas, where I knew nobody, and I was going to be in the middle of nowhere with no job prospects, but I just loved it out there. Or I was going to move to Southern Illinois with family, and it was 50-50 for a while. Family won out, got it to 51. I moved there for a couple years, but I do love North Dakota and South Dakota. They're great.
Yeah, they're beautiful. I mean, the best thing about North Dakota, I'll correct that. My best friend used to always say the only thing pretty in North Dakota is the sky. And that may or may not be true, depending on what you consider beautiful landscape. But the sky is beautiful, and the sky is huge. And that's actually one thing I miss about living there is the big open sky and the beautiful sunrises and the sunsets, and being able to watch a storm that is still in Montana roll in. So yeah. I do miss it. It's amazing. I like to visit, but I also like, being right next to Baldersoft. So I can't complain about that, but I do miss the sky. There's nothing better than North Dakota sky.
All right, so next couple questions are talking about me, so I want to get to those right away.
Oh, yeah, before you get kicked out of here for being feral.
I know. So the first one is from Bruce, and he just says, "Is that a Kraken?" And I said, "Yes, this is Kraken, Scally Cap." And Wolf Throne, we're going to skip your question real quick because the very next question's from Cody and says, "Where can you get a fine hat like that?" Boston Scally. It's really the best place to get the widest variety of Scally caps. There might be fun places. They'll get an original from England for all I care, but Boston Scally's easy, and they're purty.
Well, if you're not going to go get that exact hat, where do our folk find all the cool AFA stuff that we wear all the time? And everybody's always asked us, where you get that cool T-shirt? Where'd you get that cool hat? Where'd you get that cool pair of gym shorts?
Well, really, I'd like to say that the Runestone store, but we don't have any up right now. You can get flags, pins, stickers, books. We do have founder Stephen McNallen's The Spear, his newest book that came out a couple months ago. That's in the Runestone store, runestone.org/store. You can buy your tickets for any of our events and all of that. All right, I'm going to stop. Lydia's donating $5. Hail Whit Callahan. Hail Dick Rice. We appreciate everything you do for us. Well, Lydia, you've been doing a lot for us, too, recently. You're the reason we're getting these donations, coming up with this idea to move on over to this platform. So,
Lydia is amazing. Lydia does so many cool things, and she keeps all of us old people in touch with all of the other people who are not old. We keep saying that we need somebody like Lydia to make us cool because we're not spring chickens anymore, and we're getting called boomers a lot, Nick.
I know, and unfortunately, I'm probably one of the ones calling y'all boomers. But to be fair, I mean, Lydia's only 3 years younger than me, but she's a lot more hip and cool. And
She's cool.
when she stepped up back in what July, I
July.
believe it was. Yeah, she's done a lot in a short period of time, and she does a lot to help me out. And she does a lot to push me as well. I can be a bit stubborn with change. I didn't want to move to this new platform. It's a pain in the rear. It's a lot more work for me. It doesn't run as well on my computer, but it's pretty. It's shiny. The cool kids are doing it, and
Right?
apparently that's what we need to do to reach bigger and brighter audiences. We don't want to be. We don't want to sacrifice anything that we're doing about the church or anything like that, but.
Mhm.
We do. It does help to reach more folk, help bring folk home. We get bigger and better audiences.
We
We got
do.
we got all kinds of questions right now in the chat. I'm just going to go through real quick, just because they're talking about hats and wanting more stuff in the store. We're working on it, people. I promise. I promise. There's going to be clothes in the store. It keeps getting pushed back, unfortunately, over and over. We're trying to nail down a few more things. But we will have clothes back to store, and there are plans this time for hats, and we're going to get gym shorts and all kinds of stuff. Probably the next big thing to look out for in the store, though, is 2024 calendars will be coming out soon. And we'll be doing that. So we'll get those done, and we'll be good to go there. Let's see. What else? Finwraith, do we have any audio versions of the books? I don't think there's any audio versions of any of the books that we sell in the store. All the books we sell are by Stephen McNallen, founder McNallen, and I don't think there's any audio books, any audio versions that I'm aware of. Might be something we need to get with Elder McNallen about and see if we can enlist some people to record some audio versions. That would be cool.
That would be cool.
Don't mean to skip Wolf Throne's next question, but I'm actually going to skip it and leave that for Matt and the Ericksons. But we're going to go on to the question he just asked, because it is Nick and Brandy. How are you doing this spooky evening?
Well, how are you doing this spooky evening, Nick?
I am doing quite well. This is kind of fun. We didn't realize until about an hour or two ago Matt's running late, so we had to do an audible and figure it out. And it was just going to be you for a minute, but then I decided, you know what? Baldershoff's a little feral. If Matt's gonna pull these kind of shenanigans, we'll pull some shenanigans on him, and I'll join you.
Sometimes he needs to be careful who he leaves me unattended with. I can be easily swayed to be feral.
Absolutely.
That happens from time to time with me and the medium show Witan's Fawn. I don't know if y'all remember that episode with the medium show, but he'll never live it down.
That was great. Yeah. And it's funny, we did. I do remember that. That was probably a year ago. The medium show thing come up, and then what was it? 2 weeks ago, last week actually. Matt forgot that Swan watched wrestling, or at least had some interest in it, even if it was passing. And a question about wrestling came up, and yeah, so it was pretty nifty.
You can't get the AFA leadership started on the wrestling.
It's bad.
That's a really, really deep rabbit hole that we could spend a lot of time in. I mean, you're gonna have to get a lot of carrots to get us back on track on that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I'm doing really. I'm getting on a plane in. I don't know, what time is it? It's 8:19, right? 9:19.
8:20. Yeah.
8:20. So I'm getting on a plane here in about 5 or 6 hours. So I'm super excited because I'm going to be hanging out with all of the cool people over at Sigerheim here very, very soon, celebrating Winter Nights.
I'm super excited. I'm so excited. Just 12 hours and I get to see your face, give you a hug. So I'll be really looking forward to that.
Pretty soon.
Yeah. So we got Allie calling me out. I'm sorry, Nicholas. Did you unironically say wrestling? It's like 50-50 whether I say wrestling or wrestling. It's like my accent, the words I say, they bounce all over the place. You guys see in MeWe, we talked about MeWe, you see every single day I'm posting something about coffee. Yes, that is how I pronounce it. It is coffee. I have no idea why I say it like that, but I have not said the word coffee in years, so I do not know.
That's what happens when you have friends and family that are spread all over the United States. You tend to pick up all of their different accents. I know when I go to different places, I tend to listen to how they talk, and I kind of giggle about it, but I'll find myself doing it as well.
Yeah.
So the only time my accent gets really, really bad is if I get angry, start talking too fast, or spend a little too much time in the hot tub, and then the O's start to get a little bit exaggerated.
Yeah, between being born and raised in Illinois and then living 17 years in Georgia, watching season after season of Doctor Who, and then playing D&D and messing with accents there.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite movie, Boondock Saints and Good Will Hunting. That's like Boston, Southern, Yankee, British, Russian. I don't know what my accent is day to day, but if you try very hard, I might talk with a Russian accent for a little bit and see how many people I can offend in Mother Russia.
You see, you need to be real careful about what kind of accents you adopt for my entertainment, because you might just have to do them on the spot. You can ask poor Stian about that.
Yeah, Stian's got his Oompa Loompa accent. Yeah.
So, Nick, what's your actual favorite part about Winter Nights? Whether it be spiritual or cultural or traditional, what's your favorite part about the holiday?
Winter Nights is when it starts getting really actually cold, so I like that. But really, we're gonna go with. And I was talking with Gythia McDowell and Sheila the other day. My favorite part is Catie and Catie Erickson and her Disir bloat. It's the main part of the weekend, but it is definitely the highlight of the weekend. Everybody has their own way of doing bloats, and they're all a little unique and everything. And Catie's are really good. Last year, she even got me into a little sound mixing, and had me make a like a Disir chant audio that she had playing over speakers during the bloat. You could barely hear it, but it was there in the background, and it was pretty interesting. But Catie does a really solid bloat to Disir, and when my mom passed away 5 years ago, it's a very important time, and everybody likes. I was definitely a mama's boy, and I think a lot of boys are, a lot of men are. They do like their mamas, and it's a good time to connect with our female ancestors.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not gonna lie, I like the food. It's not the best thing, but
Yeah.
I like the food a lot. So
Absolutely.
I used to make the strawberry glazed ham. I only make it once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've moved it over to Freyfaxi. We make it at the national event at Freyfaxi, but the strawberry glazed ham was always a Winter Nights meal. So it's delicious and it's wonderful, but making all of the food, like the feast was always, making the food was always a big deal, but sharing the food with the ancestors, that was always something that's been really prevalent in my family, is the actual preparation of the food. The whole feast itself is a huge spiritual experience to make. You're putting in all of that work, all of that time. You're making recipes sometimes that are 3, 4, 5 generations old if you're lucky. But this was always my biggest feast of the year. This is where I went all out with the coal cannon and the strawberry ham, the roasted root vegetables and the desserts and all of the things. So this was always my biggest feast. So that's what I always remember the most, is I think all the time spent in the kitchen with my family and my friends and needing 15 people to make a huge feast for the army of ancestors coming through that veil to celebrate with us. So I think that's what.
Oh, I'm trying to find. I know it's kind of bad, but I know somewhere on this phone I have saved the Callahan coal cannon recipe. Here it is. Let's see here. Which one of these is it? I don't
I believe
remember.
it was in a Runestone article,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
and I took a screenshot of it. I know I can't find it right now, but somewhere I've got a screenshot of your cold cannon recipe. I really like it.
There is a coal cannon recipe that is better than the Callahan coal cannon recipe, and I will admit it. I'll admit it. My friend Alan makes the best coal cannon that I have ever had, and it's a recipe that he's never shared with me. But if I ever find out what he does different from me, I'm gonna change that recipe, that Callahan recipe, a little bit. But he does it way better than I do. That coal cannon he makes is to die for.
Oh, we got a few more questions here. We're just having some fun in the chat right now, which is good. Allie's calling me out again. First, it's about wrestling, and now she asked me if I can talk about bugs.
Talk about bugs, Nick.
I know. Well, I called her out last week because she was wanting to talk about the etymology of a particular word, and she happened to say the entomology. And I'm like, are you sure about that? You want to talk about entomology? But I don't know much about bugs, other than, let's see, praying mantises are pretty cool. After they finish doing the dirty, the female cuts off their head and eats the male, so that's pretty nifty. I'm guessing as peoples, we kind of happy they don't do that. I'd be scared. I'm scared of you enough as it is. I don't need any female murder stuffs. Oh, so
I looked in the chat here too. They're talking about.
Are
we going to talk? What? Wait, are we talking about wrestling? Yes, Miss Bell. We can talk about wrestling all day long if we choose to. I mean, I can fill up a few hours of wrestling discussion until the El Shiragothi comes in. I got
a very tight window of wrestling I could probably talk about. You got me in about just the Attitude Era. That's about the only time I ever watched, and so I was actually quite a big wrestling hater back in the day. I used to make fun of my brother for watching it because it's fake, and people back in the day didn't really. They may knew, but they didn't. It wasn't part of the thing. Nowadays, at least, I think it's pretty much acknowledged that yes, it's fake, and that's part of the fun. It's just the show. But the Attitude Era was cool. Stone Cold was awesome. Big Show, Heartbreak Kid. They were really good. I did see I didn't meet, but I saw the Heartbreak Kid in person one time at a little convention in Knoxville, Tennessee. Actually, he was kind of a dick, which was kind of disappointing. But it is a thing.
It is a thing. Well, speaking of Disir, because this is the holiday for the Disir, I'm going to tell you about one of my Disir.
Okay. Is it the fun one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of them. She was amazing. She was absolutely amazing. My grandma Bonnie is the reason that I watch wrestling. Right? She's the reason that I've watched it since I was a little kid. And she was in love with Sting. And we used to turn it on and we would watch it, and you weren't allowed to tell her it was fake. She would throw things at you. I mean, she would like take a chair after you. It is not fake. They are bleeding. And she had a love-hate relationship with Ric Flair. It depended on if he was a heel or a face at the time. But if he was in his heel face, she hated Ric Flair. And if he wasn't, she loved him. But look how much he's bleeding. Grandma, he bleeds in the same place every single time. And she would have logical explanations. That's because it's scar tissue and it breaks easier. That's why, So you could never tell her that it was staged or that it was fake, because she could be extraordinarily terrifying. And I believe she could probably have wrestled in the WCW at the time. So you didn't want to argue with her. You just had to just go with it. But
Nate's pointing out in the chat, see how fake metal folding chair feels across the back. And even when it is fake, I'll definitely acknowledge They are actually cutting themselves. They're doing it intentionally. They're actually getting hit on occasion. Those falls probably don't feel good. I went to wrestling, actually professional wrestling training. I went to one practice. Got to learn how to lock up, and basically I'm uncoordinated. I can't roll. Every time, and that's like wrestling 101. You fall, you roll, you get up. I couldn't do it. I just said, yeah, anything.
Yeah. All I know is it hurts because when I was like 6 or 7, me and my cousins decided we were going to go outside and play wrestling. And there was 4 of us, and one of them was the Rock and Roll Express, and then the other 2 were the Midnight Express, right? So we were wrestling in the back of the pickup, and we all fell out of the back of that pickup. So I can imagine it hurt falling out of the out of the ring. If falling out of the pickup hurt, I can only imagine.
Absolutely. Let's see if we can catch up a little bit with this chat here. Oh, let's see. Where did we leave off? Lydia wants a coffee joke. I don't have any coffee jokes, and you know how good my jokes were. We were talking about the other night. I got to read them all off the internets. So I can see here, how are you guys just like coffee? The best ones are rich, hot, and can keep you up all night. I don't know. There's your joke. All righty. I am not a funny, jokey person.
I like my coffee. I like my coffee like I like my attitude. Sometimes dark and sometimes bitter.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Niederok Norther says, which Hoff is the tastiest and why is it Thor's Hoff?
It's Thor's Hoff. It is Baldur's Hoff.
Food is one of those things you can't be getting us started. No, I know Heather and all of the ladies over there at Thor's Hoff probably cook some good food. In fact, I know they do. It was good when I've been there, but it is nothing like Baldur's Hoff. We got Steen out there cooking for us, and it is amazing.
Got Jamie out there, yeah. We got Jamie, we've got Steen, and we've got Ashley, and we've got Jesse Schaefer out there who cooks. Plus, Lydia has been out there cooking. Like, the food is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So you do realize that Steen Penner actually modifies old Julia Child recipes to make them compatible with deer and venison and like different kind of meats, and everything has real butter in it. Also, everything might have a shot of mustard in it, but everything also has butter in it. So it's not just good for your body; it's good for your soul.
All right, this isn't a question, but we got to call out Gythia Rob Stam over here. He said he'd knife a fool for a bowl of your knofel.
A bowl of my soup?
Yeah.
The Nephilim soup?
Absolutely.
Yes, Rob definitely liked the Nephilim soup. So, Rob, I'm going to have to, when I come down that way, I will make you the Black Forest cake and the Nephilim if the Thor's Hoff people will let me in the kitchen.
Oh, man. Wolf Thrones asking who my favorite wrestler was. It's hard to say. I bounced around. I like The Rock. I like Stone Cold. I liked AJ Styles when he was with TNA before he transferred over to the big time. DDP was pretty cool back in the day.
DDP was awesome. You know he likes some yoga videos now?
Oh, yeah. Diamond Dallas. Yeah, DDP yoga is a thing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Finn over there in Finn Wraith. Actually, our only Finnish member is pretty cool. He's asking, do we like any real fighting sports like MMA? I watch it. It's cool. The thing I've been into recently, though, is I decided I wanted to get into rugby and watch rugby. So I learned the rules, and I started watching rugby and such. And I actually bought a rugby ball the other day. It arrived yesterday. So we're going to throw around the rugby ball maybe a little bit at winter nights just for the heck of it.
Just to see what happens?
Yeah. I used to play semi-pro football, so I've been hit a few times in my life. Let's see how it is.
So we're gonna have this whole theory of what's the worst that could happen with a rugby ball and a bunch of AFA men. That's what you're going with, Nick?
Yeah, that's about how it is. Oh, let's see here. Roll down. Oh man, The Undertaker, says Sarah. Undertaker is good, actually. We were supposed to have a wrestling shirt thing at Fall Fest or Frey Faxi, but that didn't happen, and I brought my Undertaker shirt.
You didn't wear it?
I wore it for about 5 minutes, walking out to the hot tub, and then I took it off to get in the hot tub.
There you go.
Oh man, let's see here.
So do we have any questions, or am I going to start winging it now?
I mean, we got a few questions. It's just seeing if we want to cover. Do you want to cover any of these topical Winter Nights questions, or we want to leave those for the stars of the show?
Well, I can take a swing at them, and they can always answer them when they come back in, because Winter Nights is such a vast holiday that is rooted in like family tradition that I bet they're going to have a different answer. Everybody you ask is going to have a different answer.
All righty. So, yeah, we might throw these in and get them answered twice tonight, then. Wolf Throne, he actually had, this is the third question of the night. We skipped it a while back. As someone who grew up with Halloween and being very nostalgic for it, I'd like to know if there's any traditional Halloween elements in Winter Nights, such as pumpkins, candy, costumes. Seems like it'd be a great way to get kids involved.
It is a great way to get kids involved. We actually ask parents, or we don't ask them, we invite them, that if their children want to wear their Halloween costumes to the Hoff for Winter Nights, we are totally okay with that, and we encourage that. We hand out candy. We still carve pumpkins. If you want to get really traditional, you can go ahead and carve a turnip if you're patient, and you can do that. So yeah, all of these things are things that we've done for a really, really long time. Halloween and Winter Nights, I mean, they're not the same thing. Of course, Halloween is the commercialized thing, and the Winter Nights is the sacred celebration of your ancestors. But build those traditions with your family. So if it's your family tradition to, celebrate Halloween with carving jack-o'-lanterns, incorporate that into your Winter Night celebration. You have to remember all of these things that we do in our homes and all of these things in our hearth culture. It's very, very important to make sure that you're building that as a family and celebrating what your family did before. Tradition is very important because that's one of the ways that we honor our ancestors, right? So if your grandmother always served the same thing on, let's say, Yule, for example, grandma always served this dish. Carry on her tradition by serving that dish. So if your family has always carved pumpkins, continue to carve pumpkins. Put a spiritual aspect into it if you want to. Make it a devotional thing if you want to. Take 3 hours and put knot work into it, and then, give it as a gift if you want to do that. Hey, put the candles in your windows, whether it's the actual burning candles or whether or not you want to be safe like me because I have feral animals in my house who have to knock over everything. Get the battery operated ones or get a lantern and put that in your window. Put your jack-o'-lantern in your window. Just light the way for your ancestors to find you that day. One of the biggest traditions that I have for Winter Nights is the cleaning before Winter Nights, right? If I'm going to invite my grandmother over, my house is not going to be a mess. She would not appreciate that. She would probably start tossing things off the counter. It's a thing. But whatever traditions that you have, see how you can incorporate things that you already do with your family in a spiritual way. Find an opportunity to, talk to them about, we're going to put a candle in this jack-o'-lantern and we're going to light it for this reason, whether it's to scare off the spooky things that are outside, or whether you just want to have a light to, let's say you don't carve a face. Let's say you carve beautiful knotwork and imagery into the jack-o'-lantern with runes or staves or just some kind of beautiful design, and you light it up and you use that as a way to call from the West. So you can really take things that you're already doing, especially with your children, and build on them. That was a big rabbit hole. Did I answer that question?
Oh no, you did great. Absolutely. No, and every Hoth definitely has different traditions about it. Every group's gonna have different traditions. But in the end, Winter Nights is about the ancestors and the ancestors had their own traditions, as you said, whether it be the food or not. But I mean, one way to think about it, if you're honoring your ancestors, part of honoring them is, acknowledging some of their traditions. They had their own family stuff. So if your family, like you said, had certain food or decorated a certain way, my mother wasn't a big fan of Halloween. She didn't really do much. We weren't, we weren't, you know, we weren't candy giver outer peoples, but we had other traditions throughout the year. Our biggest one, New Year's Eve, we'd stay up all night till midnight playing rummy. So that may not be one we do at winter nights time, but that's going to be definitely one that we're going to acknowledge and incorporate later on in the year to make sure.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
All righty, we got some more questions lined up. I like people throwing stuff out here for us. I do want to take a little bit of time and say, so we've talking about winter nights, and we're talking about winter nights being at Sigerheim this year, or this weekend. But I also want to remind everybody, since I am the guy living at Sigerheim or near Sigerheim, that we do have events every single month at Sigerheim. Most of the time, it's just me and a couple people. It's not these big shindigs. But if you're ever in the area, Tennessee, Sigerheim is ours as the AFA. So you're more than welcome to come on out, see Sigerheim anytime you want. I could always get with you and show you around and help you out. I've got a member that just contacted me earlier today, actually. He said he's going to be in the area the day before Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, I don't have any family living nearby, so I'm not really doing anything for Thanksgiving myself. So we're going to get together because he's going to be in the area. His brother apparently lives next county over, so we're going to get together. But we're doing a Feast of the 900-yard bloat on November 19th. No, 18th. November 18th. And then Yule, we're going to be celebrating on December 23rd. So you can come on out then and come see me, or you can come on out a different time and we'll make do. If you want to come out and work, we can put you to work. There's always trees to cut down. There's brush to clear. We got 60 acres of woods. We could figure out something to do for everybody. So I do appreciate that. All righty. We got Barry's in here asking questions for the chat. Or no. Yeah, for the chat, not for the guests. Well, maybe I want to answer the question. I'm gonna steal it just because we're feral and we don't care about the rules.
Nick does what he wants.
Question for the chat, not for our guests. He does say unless we want to answer it. What would be a good offering to give a chemist ancestor? My dad says Dr. Pepper, but I'm not sure on that one. I'm gonna say a chemist. I hope we're working in a lab that's OSHA certified, not some other kind of lab. But a good ancestor that's a chemist. What would be a good offering? It doesn't necessarily have to involve chemistry. What did he like to eat? What did he like to drink? What did he like to smoke? What did he like to do in his free time? But if it was something chemically related, what kind of chemist was he? I'm sure they all do different things. I have a buddy, he went to school, got a degree in chemistry, and now he works for the Red Cross, and he just does the blood work. Because every time you donate blood, they run a test, make sure you ain't got no diseases or anything like that.
What would be a good... So they have this. So if you're outside and you have like a fire, you're having a fire, right? And you're doing a sumbul or you're toasting your ancestor around the fire. They always have this this campfire chemical that you can throw into the fire, and it makes a really big whoosh, and all the colors change, and it's really awesome. So that would be kind of cool.
Absolutely. So I do hate to stop the show, but I got to go check something. I think Matt might be here. Let's see here. Yeah, we have Matt. I don't see anybody else on the couch with him, but we're going to go over to Matt here in a second and figure out what's going on. Oh, there they are. They're still running around. Matt, you ready? You want to come on, or you want us to keep talking, buddy? All righty.
Yeah.
Well, you 5 minutes. All right. No.
No, we can. I can hear the Alshira Gothi talking.
All right. Well, you tell me what he wants. I can't hear him.
All righty. So I can hear the Alshira Gothi. Nick, can you hear the Alshira Gothi? He's
I
speaking
can't.
through the F to you.
I can't. I'll be able to hear him once I add him, but until I add him to the show, I won't be able to hear him.
Oh, okay. All right. They are ready to go, Nick. So I am going to sign off and tell you guys, come on out to Winter Nights. We're all going to be there. I'm going to go pack my bags, and I will see all of you amazing people in about 13 hours.
Absolutely. I do appreciate it. And Charlie, make sure you send that question over to her on MeWe. I know you're on there since we're not going to be able to get to it. But here we go, everybody. I do appreciate y'all letting us butt in and steal the show for a little bit. But here comes the Alcir Gothi and guests. So we'll see what we can do. And you guys have a good one.
Happy Winter Nights.
Happy Winter Nights.
Typically don't know what I'm trying to figure out. So if you could help me with adjustments. Oh, hey guys. All right. We're sorry. I appreciate Brandy filling in for us for a minute here. When you're traveling and setting up for an event, sometimes things don't always go exactly as you got planned on it. Hope it's been an awesome show so far. I'm sure it has been with Brandy. We've got a couple of camera things we're going to try to play with here for just a second. Yeah, Nick, I don't know if there's a way to pause or if you guys just want to deal with us here for a second while we adjust our camera.
I think you can adjust away, sir.
All right. Hi, everybody. Haha, comes right back to me. I appreciate that. Camera's got loyalty. All right, how are we looking in the frame, Nick? We looking all right? Adjustments, what do you think?
You're good to go right now. I see a lot of the kitchen, but once Catie sits down and everything gets straightened away, I'm assuming she's gonna, split y'all. We should be good to go.
Catie may be a little bit in and out. She's got some stuff she's working on here, so I think you got us. Are we live for the audience? Are they listening to all this nonsense?
Absolutely. They should hear all of this. See you guys. See my face in the corner.
There you go. You guys get the inside scoop. So here we are. We're trying something new today. Hope you guys, are entertained by the novelty of it. Nick, are we handling questions the same way we normally do?
Yeah, we'll throw them to you in BB.
Okay, cool. Just catching up on the chat. All right, awesome. So, thinking if there's top of the show, I like to advertise our upcoming events. And it's a little bit short notice if you guys haven't gotten the message by now, but we've got Winter Nights celebrated probably 5 miles down the road from where I'm sitting right now at Sigerheim. We've got that kicking off officially on Friday. So if any of you guys are within, getting here distance to Jackson County, Tennessee, we would love to see you guys come out. Also, next think 2 weeks from this weekend, we're going to have Feast of the Einherjar in South Dakota. I'm going to be out for that. The McNallans are going to be out for that. That'll be really exciting. So on that. Yeah, I think that's what we got from the top of it. It's a treat. We've got 3 people on, but 1 screen. We're doing all kind of new things today on Victory Never Sleeps. And I wanted to have the Ericksons on to talk to us about Winter Nights generally and about AFA Winter Nights celebrations in specific. They have been heading those up now for the past quite a few years. Cliff has been heading it up for almost all of them. But he can talk to you a little bit about that and how the event has developed. Cliff, thanks for picking me up at the airport. And if you would tell these fine folks a little bit about the history of AFA Winter Nights.
Yeah, of course. And sorry I was late picking you up. We were at the Sam's Club getting all the food that Catie is prepping right now to make sure all of our folk are well fed this weekend. So Winter Nights originally started as the not the second ever big AFA event outside of California. I know that Florida has some claim to some old school stuff, but Winter Nights in the Poconos at the time was the first real sticky, if you will, AFA national event outside of California. This coming event will be Winter Nights 12, and the first 10 of those Winter Nights were held at a camp in northeastern Pennsylvania, almost on the New York state line, and that was a follow-up to the McNallans coming out east here to see how folkish Asatru was alive and well on the East Coast. And they liked what they saw, and they, I don't know the exact words that they might have used, but folk builder Patricia Hall set to making sure that the AFA had annual representation in that form. And it stuck. It became a very successful event. I've had the privilege and honor and joy of having attended all 11 of the Winter Nights so far, and soon to be 12. It is a celebration of our ancestral mothers, the Disir. The focus of Winter Nights has always been on that Disir bloat, which makes it a unique holiday compared to a lot on our calendar. It and Feast of the Einherjar are holy days that we have that are dedicated to our ancestors and our heroes, rather than to a specific deity or to that agricultural cycle that a lot of our holidays are focused on. And I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, but Winter Nights is so very special because of that connection to the ancestral mothers. It is by far, I think, one of the most personal holidays that we have, because we all have ancestral mothers, whether we were adopted or whether we knew our direct maternal line. Everyone here owes such a great deal to all the actions, and in some cases inactions, if it were appropriate, by all those women who, going all the way back to Frigga at the beginning of time at our creation, made it so that we can be here in this world, and made it so we can be happy and healthy and strong and exert our will in Midgard. And if we're really successful, maybe even beyond. And it's a very special holiday to me, because Winter Nights is really what got me involved in the Asatru Folk Assembly. I had been a hanger around of the AFA prior to Winter Nights, even for almost a year after my first Winter Nights. I didn't actually sign up for AFA membership until just before Winter Nights 2, that September, I think it was. But Winter Nights in the Poconos was the first Asatru event that I went to. I mean, in retrospect, it was the first Asatru event that I actually ever went to, other than some small gatherings at Patricia Hall's home. But at the time, I was going around between different quote unquote heathen events and trying to find out what my place was in all of that, and trying to figure out what these groups were doing, what was going to, be, what my place was going to be in any of that. And a lot of the other groups weren't really serious, or they were serious about the wrong thing. The Asatru Folk Assembly and Winter Nights in the Poconos was where I really first felt like it was a religious event, and where I really felt completely comfortable with everybody who was there. Didn't feel like I had to watch my back. Didn't feel like anybody was trying to use me for whatever purposes or anything like that. It was honest people worshiping their gods and their ancestral mothers in a very wholesome way. And I stuck around. So, and it's a special event for me because, I didn't meet her there for the first time, but Winter Nights in the camp that it was hosted at for 10 years is where I got to know my wife long before she was my wife. It's where I first met Witan Svan. It's where I first met Alshir Gothi Matt, among so many other people that if I tried to list them all, I'd end up, leaving somebody important out. Yeah, so it's really, really special. And then starting last year, unfortunately, the camp that had hosted us for so long changed their business model. It was a private summer camp for girls that we were using, and they switched from for-profit to nonprofit status, and they had to restructure some of their things that they did in order to be in compliance with the regulations that are imposed by the IRS for things, for nonprofit organizations that get those tax exemptions. And so they stopped hosting private groups in general. It wasn't an AFA specific action that they took. But it was kind of heartbreaking. I admit, I loved it be there in northeastern Pennsylvania at that camp where so many memories over that time had been built up. But we were fortunate to have a member in Ohio step up and allow us to use his family's private campground for Winter Nights 11 in Southern Ohio. And then this year, we actually had another camp reserved in Ohio, and that didn't work out because frankly, they weren't people of their word. They broke their commitment to us with rather short notice. But fortunately, Sigerheim is here for us to have as it's our home, so it's always going to be our fallback position. We did explore, if there were other camps available on short notice with the number of facilities and amenities that we needed to host upwards of 100 people, but with only a couple of months, that wasn't a realistic thing. So we looked in Pennsylvania and Ohio and a little bit beyond too. I think we looked in West Virginia too, but that didn't work out in a short time frame that we needed for planning purposes. So we moved it down here to Tennessee at our AFA home at Sigerheim, and it's going to be a fantastic event. The little tent village is already starting to grow. There's 4 tents there right now. Me and Catie and our children have been there since Sunday morning doing some prep work, which is very much on the backs of people who have already been putting in work weekends at Sigerheim regularly, including Nick Rice, the Youngs, the Bethays, and I'm sure many other people that I can't recall at this moment right here on this couch. But I know I've seen them in the pictures and I've already met them and talked to them. A lot of people have done a lot of work to improve the Sigerheim property since Siger Bloat in July. I think everyone who comes here is going to be really pleased to see the progress and know that every time we use the property, it's going to be improved since the last time that we did. That's one of the things that I think as Asatru we take seriously. We shape our world around us, and that's something that is very true about Sigerheim. I'm really pleased with how it's shaping up, and I'm looking forward to seeing people here starting about lunchtime on Friday. If you don't get here for that, then it's going to actually be a late supper on Friday, just so that you know we've got some rituals planned between lunch and supper, which will be, I think, around 7 p.m. that day. So that's my take on Winter Nights. Gythia Catie can speak to it in a lot of ways too, but she is tending to the kids right now. So I'll toss the ball back to Matt, and we can bring her back into the conversation when she's here.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys bearing with us this evening. It's a little bit haphazard. But yeah, we'll get Catie out here when she is available. You may see me getting up, scurrying around and getting stuff and trying to adjust lighting and different. Anyways, I appreciate you guys bearing with it. Zach gave us a little beers clanking $5 deal, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It says, "Hail Matt and Cliff, enjoy your time at Sigerheim. Always do, always will." We're very, very excited about it. I certainly am. It's a beautiful country. I love coming out here, and it's such a special place. And I hope I get to share that with a lot of you guys this weekend. Hey, Catie, can you pull these lights over the table and see what that looks like? Sorry, trying to adapt to a lighting suggestion we got. Just a little bit
better.
Good idea, Lydia. Thank you. So, as Cliff was saying, up until what year was that first Winter Nights, Cliff?
2012, I think.
23 minus 12.
Not quite.
So,
this is the 12th, so it was 11 years ago.
Anyways, when that happened, I was part of those discussions a little bit. At the time, I was, I think, the assistant folk builder coordinator. And I've been really fortunate. I've been able to be at all the Winter Nights. For the longest time, the AFA was a West Coast phenomenon. And for a longer time after that, it was perceived as being a West Coast phenomenon. People who may have joined in the last few years may be kind of shocked to hear that. If you look at our membership map today, it's very much not the case. The vast majority of our members are right around that Mississippi corridor or to the east. So the growth of the AFA has been tremendous in just that short amount of time. But that was kind of the first big national event that was going to be regularly occurring outside of Midsummer that was going on in Northern California. And it's been amazing, and it's built a lot of steam since then. It's been a very, very special event, and it in a lot of ways, it was really the start of a big AFA surge and a leaping off platform to really expand the AFA, and it's done a very successful job at that. But it's also been an event that has been really personal to a lot of us. It's at that event in 2014 that I met my wife, Mandy. She was in Florida. I was coming from Alaska, and we met in Pennsylvania at Winter Nights. So that was the start of that. And so far, so good. We got a beautiful little 3.5-year-old daughter, and those things absolutely can happen. But I don't know if it would have happened, or it would have happened in a very different way if not for AFA Winter Nights, which this is a continuation of. Trying to think of what else to say up front. There's a lot of Winter Nights stuff to talk about, but I do want to get to some of the questions that are stacking up as well. Before we All right, we will get to that in a moment. I want to bring Catie over here to talk about the Disir and her Disir bloats. She is, that's one of her showcase things she's able to do. And here she comes. Catie, can you talk to folks, assuming that they've never heard of the Disir before and don't understand the connection to Winter Nights, and kind of break down our Disir bloat and why we do that and why we do it this time of year?
Okay. I'll try.
We can make room if you want to go over.
No, I'm good. I'll have to pop up again and keep stirring the food in a minute. So when I first became a Godar student, I was asked by my then mentor, Patricia Hall, to jump right in. I'd been a student for like 2 months, and she's like, "You're doing Disir bloat," and I was like, "What?" There are no words to explain to the absolute sheer panic that I felt when she told me I was doing Disir bloat, and she gave me like a month. Anybody who knows me knows that I will literally spend an entire year after the first bloat, or after bloat, planning the next one. Not because I'm doing all kinds of remarkable things or anything. It's just because Patricia Hall was really amazing at what she did, and it was a very, very hard act to follow. I will probably spend my whole life trying to live up to Patricia Hall. Sorry, guys, there's some kind of weird feedback over here. And I think it stopped.
Carry on. I will talk to Nick about the tech issue on the side here.
Right, sorry. So anyway, yeah, so the Disir bloat is what it sounds like. It's a bloat in which we honor our Disir. If the concept of bloat is that we are giving gifts to the gods in return for the gifts that they have given us, then it's the same when you talk to the Disir or about Disir bloat. We are giving the gifts to our female ancestors who, I mean, let's face it, without them we wouldn't exist, and we owe them a great amount. You take that whole concept of the eggs for every woman develop inside the womb. Like when you're a baby, when you're developing in your mother's womb, the eggs that you will have for the rest of your life are developed in the last like week or two before you're born. So literally, I was created, at least part of me was created while my mom was inside her mom. That right there, I mean, that to me is like the best picture of the connection that as women in particular we have to our Disir, to our female ancestors. We celebrate in October because Winter Nights was traditionally held in October. Specifically, it was usually held around. You scared the crap. Sorry, my son is poking me. Sorry. Was held on or right around the full moon in the month of October, or the equivalent 1,000 years ago. One thing that I like to stress really hard is that Winter Nights is not the Celtic Samhain. They're not related. A lot of people think because we're celebrating our female ancestors that it's equivalent to the veils are thinning and the dead are closer to us than ever. But if we have a similar time in the Asatru calendar, I would say it's probably during Yuletide on the Wild Hunt rides. So they're really not connected. The only thing that they really have in common is the fact that they both happen in October. That's just something I like to stress because a lot of people conflate the two, and they're not the same. But I'm kind of losing track here. What else was I supposed to say?
No, that's all good. I was just going to have you talk a little bit about your Disir bloats and how those are kind of your thing that you do, and let people know a little bit more about the Disir and why we celebrate them this time of year. So a question comes up. I'm going to go to some of our questions now. As someone who grew up with Halloween and being very nostalgic for it, I'd like to know if there's any traditional Halloween elements in winter nights, such as pumpkins, candy, costumes, etc. Seems like it would be a great way to get kids involved. So there is, and I want to add on to what Gythia Catie was saying a second ago. We have a number of different celebrations throughout, I'd say throughout the early winter, like October, November, December, that all center on these concepts of the veil being thin and our access to our ancestors being pronounced. I think that the various holidays are very similar and different permutations of a very common theme that way. And so traditional Halloween stuff is certainly appropriate to do. I think you guys may notice at our Hoffs or in our pictures, very often we've got traditional fun Halloween stuff because, again, it's that spooky time of year where the veil between worlds is thin and we do stuff involving the dead, involving our ancestors. And if we can loop that in with Halloween, I think it's completely appropriate to do so. And and as the person asking the question, Wolf Throne, I think, said, it is a fun way to get the kids involved. So sometimes at our events, we do have like, costume parties, costume things this time of year. Do we have any of that scheduled for this year, Catie?
We do. Anybody who's coming who has small children, please make sure you have them bring their costumes. We're going to be doing a little costume parade, and we're going to have candy for them. We are going to opt out of pumpkins this year because it takes a long time and tends to get really messy, and we don't have running water. So it's not practical. But yes, always we do. At least when we have hosted winter nights in the past, we almost always do costumes and try to find other things to engage the kids, because as far as I'm concerned, I want them to remember our holidays and I want them to love our holidays. So we gotta make that happen so that they want to stay Asatru when they get older,
We're still in and it is what it is, and it's worth being honest about, but we're over 50 years into Asatru in a modern context. And one of the things that we continuously try to do is find more ways to build tradition that's going to stick with the kids throughout their lives. It's part of, this question being asked, and we think about it all through our calendar. There's so many things that we've got fond Christmas memories, or fond Easter memories, or fond, Halloween or Thanksgiving or anything else. And very few of those memories have much to do with Jesus. They often have to do with things that are completely appropriate and part of how white people celebrate spring stuff and winter stuff. Quite a bit of, if not most of those things, go back to our ancestral paganism. And so keeping those and incorporating those is, there's no reason not to do that. And it's a fun way to generationally keep the kids involved with traditions and things that we also harken back to as being special things for our childhood and have special memories about. Our next question from Barry. Just found out one of my ancestors was a locally famous clown. Do you think a written joke would be an appropriate offering to him specifically? Barry, not knowing your ancestor, I couldn't really say. I think clowns do a lot of different stuff. Or if the point of it is you're trying to honor your ancestor, if they were a clown by trade, I have to assume that they have a sense of humor, and that'd probably be a nice thing for you to do. Keep that attitude of respect when you're doing it, and the intent of your offering pure, and I think that'd probably be a nice thing for you to do. What do you think, Cliff?
Well, I guess they say that mimicry or emulation is the sincerest form of flattery. So if you're doing it to try to, follow in his footsteps or to be more like him, then that's a way to honor him. I don't know that if your ancestor were a dancer, that doing a dance would necessarily be required. It's certainly a personal thing. If you knew this person in life, then you know a lot more about what their sensibilities or tastes might have been. But that's really a personal decision. That's your family member, and how you approach them should be personal.
Absolutely. Our next question. I don't have a photo of my ancestor that passed. How else can I honor them for winter nights? Well, so details are everything on that. I don't know what you might have. I don't know if this ancestor is recent or, someone in the way back before you might have anything in theirs. A photo is special because you can see exactly, what they looked like in life. And I think that's a really, really special way to connect that we're able to do these days. But if you don't, do you have anything else that belongs to them? I think finding things that you can use as a focal point for stuff in your altar, for your devotions, for your offerings, for your communication. It helps us to, like I said, to focus. It helps us to direct what we're doing at a certain point. And that makes everything a way that our mind works better. But barring that, if you're looking for some way to honor them on your your ancestors' altar, what do you know about them, and work from there. It's frustrating and self-defeating to just focus on the things that you don't have when you still probably have a lot of opportunities of ways to honor them. The other thing is, even if you had nothing, if you wound up, deserted on a deserted isle somewhere, they're still your ancestor. They're still connected to you, and you're still connected to them. Anything that you are doing, if your intent is right, is a nice way to honor them. How much you need to fill with your own creativity is dependent upon your circumstance. Without knowing a lot more about your ancestor, I don't have a specific idea off the top of my head. Cliff, do you have any thoughts?
I guess when we talk about a photograph of an ancestor, that's a modern creation. Photographs are relatively recent, but really it's an icon. And that could be a painting. It could be, icons could take many forms. Idols, a statue or a carving or something like that, a relief. And then there's also relics. Maybe you have some personal effect of theirs. It could be anything. I mean, I have a brick from the farmhouse that my grandfather was born in. It's just a brick, but it's a particular brick. You could create some kind of an icon if you don't have anything like that. If your ancestor was a sailor, maybe you make or buy a ship in a bottle and use that to have a visual connection to that ancestor. There's a lot of different ways that could be done. And so I think if we consider that a photograph or a lock of hair or a bracelet or a locket or a pistol or a sword or any of these things that we might have that represent our ancestors, If we think of them as icons and relics, they're reminders of who the person was. And I mean, it could be a song, it could be a record or something like that. If we think about it from that approach, then really what's important about these things is that they remind us of the ancestor, which ties back into what Matt was saying, as far as even if you don't have these things, it is your memory of the person and speaking to them that's the most important thing. So a photograph is absolutely appropriate to place on an ancestral altar and to utilize it as an icon. But remember that the photo is not the ancestor themselves. It's just a reminder of them.
I'm going to chime in real quick. As somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of anything left from recent or distant ancestors, and I'm sorry about my children in the background. They should be going to sleep already, but our routines are from normal the last week. One thing I know is I've asked my mom, for example, for stories. And every once in a while, when she thinks of a story, she'll give me a story of like her dad or one of her uncles, and I try to remember those. I try to remember them so I can tell my kids, because if I can tell my kids those stories, then that ancestor becomes remembered. But we don't always have the luxury of stories. We don't always have the luxury of items. And if you wish to honor your ancestors, sometimes just the fact that you want to do so, the intent behind it can matter a lot. I like the idea of finding an item that reminds you of an ancestor. You may not know that ancestor. You may not have any stories about them, but say it's your great grandmother who lived during the Depression. She probably would have liked flowers. She probably didn't have access to flowers, or maybe she would have really liked a pie, because I'm pretty sure they didn't bake a lot of pies, not the normal kind during the Depression. So maybe you put a piece of pie on the altar for her when you wish to honor her, or you put flowers, or you find like a silly little item from a thrift store, like a pretty vase or something, and you can put that vase on your altar, and that can become the altar that means to you your grandmother or your great grandmother. So you can create associations with people or for people. But the biggest thing to remember is that when you want to honor your ancestors, all you have to do is light a candle and remember them and say their names out loud. Saying their names is the most important thing. Remembering them is the most important thing. The pictures are nice, but unless you say their names, none of it matters.
I'll disagree with you a little bit. You don't necessarily have to know their names. Some people are adopted, and others.
I'll give you that.
And let's be honest. The vast majority of our ancestors, we don't know their names. We may have the good fortune to be able to document 2 or 3 or maybe 10 generations back, but at some point that documentation stops. Even if you can document back 40 generations of ancestors, you've got this magnificent genealogy and records of everyone of your ancestors. At some point those ancestors fold back into a people, England or Norway or Germany or wherever else, and your story really then turns into the story of that people, which maybe is the story of a nation for a time, maybe is the story of the people of that nation before it formed. And then it goes back even farther than that to prehistory, where we have our myths and our legends, but that you're basically imagining people. You knew they existed because you do. They must have been there, but you don't really know anything about them other than, there was some ancestor in the Stone Age who led a life that was successful enough to produce offspring, and you're the result of that in a very direct way, even if it's separated by many degrees. And and I think it helps to imagine what the life of those ancestors might have been. And that could be in any time period. If you don't know anything about your ancestors that were in the 18th century, imagining what their lives might have been like by learning about the history of the culture that you're from, about the experiences that people might have had in that time period, are a way to do that. Learning history and learning languages and learning geography and maps and all of that stuff is a way to be closer to all of those unnamed ancestors. And I don't think it's silly to look at like a topographical map of Norway as a way to kind of meditate on your Norwegian ancestors, if that's your lineage, or to imagine what it would have been like to be in the fjords or in the forests or any of those things. Those are ways to pay honor and homage to those unnamed ancestors, which are by far the vast majority of ancestors that we have.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. You are completely and totally equipped to honor any or all of your ancestors with absolutely nothing beyond yourself and your DNA. But every little piece that you have from there helps connect you that much closer, helps, enhance the intent behind what you're doing and show effort in building that connection. The gentleman who asked the question about the clown and the joke, if that's all you have to go on, I say, I don't know anything about this dude, but he was a clown. Maybe he'd think this is funny. That's something. And something is generally better than nothing. And the more somethings that you have, the easier that connection is. Often the way most of us are wired to make. Catie mentioned about names, though, and I think names are really important. It's one thing. So I think most of you might be familiar because we've talked about it on the program a number of times, but Sumbul is a really special ritual of ours, and it involves toasts. And during the Ancestors round, this isn't, wrong or heretical, but it's subpar is when people don't want to raise his horn to my grandma. Hail, grandma. It's better, if you can, to tell us your grandma's name and have us be able to hail her properly with it. Because again, we're going from we know 0 things to we know 1 thing. This is your grandma. Oh, and now we know her name. That's something else. If you could, we believe that our ancestors look on from beyond the veil and are aware of these things when we honor them. Someone who's been passed away for a while, I would imagine it would be a very special thing for them to hear, a room full of 100 people hail them and give them a toast, speaking their name again in Midgard. So names are important if you have them. Stories are amazing if you have them. Finding out, if you do any of your genealogy online or you look into that, finding names and dates and places is really cool. But if you every now and again, you'll stumble upon one that somebody has captured a story of. And even if it's just a few lines or a paragraph, it's really special to have those. And I treasure each time I've come across something like that in my own search for my ancestors.
Yeah, I think it's the specificity. Being as specific as you can is important. If you know their name, you should use it. If you don't, then you should learn as much about what they might have been like. If you have a photo, you should use it. If you have a photo and their lathe, then those both should be put in a place of honor. It's doing as much as you can with what you have and having that specific intent of being, as forthright as you can. It's a lot like when we we recommend and encourage people to use the word Asatru when they describe the religion. Don't say that you're a pagan. Don't say that you're a tribist, focal, heathen, whatever, mabob. Say that you're Asatru, because that describes exactly what you mean. And then you might have to explain it to more people, but that gives you the advantage of giving them what you mean by that. And it's the same thing if you raise the horn to Grandma Myrtle, who was a seamstress. That means a lot more to people than just grandma.
Absolutely. And in any attempt to honor your ancestor and honor our gods, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So many people wait until there's the perfect time and they know, man, if only I know a little bit more, I'm almost there, but just give me another year worth of research and then I'll don't waste the time. Time's precious. Do what you can with what you have and improve on it over time. Our next question. Appreciate you. We can always count on you to ask this. From Robert E. Boy Lee. Good evening. How is y'all's evening going? My evening is going really well. A little bit hectic, as you can tell, but I'm sitting down, having a beer, hanging out with my friends, and talking to you guys on here. So can't complain. I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Cliff?
I'm doing great. I had a shower for the first time in 4 days, so I feel wonderful. Catie probably appreciates that too. Both my shower and hers. No, it's really nice. We've been here in Tennessee since Sunday morning. We drove all night from about 8 p.m. Saturday to get here at about 7 a.m. Sunday morning. It was perfect. We literally were getting to Sigerheim right at the crack of dawn. My son Owen and I like to talk about the crack of dawn. It's a big thing when you're 5, phrases like that. Gives a little bit more power, and we've been working at Sigerheim to make things good, to make them better than we found them, and to leave them in a place where people can continue to build from what we have. Very much appreciating the couch right now. We're going to be here with Matt for tonight, but then we'll be back at Sigerheim, camping with everybody for the rest of the weekend. Yeah, I'm in a really great mood. I'm having for someone, when you're organizing an event, there's this crescendo of stress as the event gets closer and closer, because for months, a few people register, and then you're not sure what things are going to look like, and then you get into this crunch time where there's a flood of people who follow through and assuring you that they're going to be there, but then they make it real by registering, so you can actually include them in the head count for buying food and for other planning. And I'm at the break point now where the die is cast, as Julius Caesar said, and it is going to be what it's going to be, and that is going to be great. There's going to be over 20 kids here. I'm really excited for the weekend, and so for me, all the stressful parts of this event are already over. It's great.
I almost interrupted you to say the die is cast. So that's awesome. Catie, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. My husband likes to talk about this being the end of the crunch time. For me, this is the beginning of crunch time because I'm in charge of all the food. And I keep running away to the stove because I'm working on getting some prep work done so we have less to do on site at Sigerheim. Otherwise, I had a shower and I feel remarkable. It's amazing how much of a difference just some warm water can make, and soap, a lot of soap.
I appreciate that these people clean themselves before I arrive. So I just got the squeaky clean version. This is a 2-part question. I'm told the second part is very important. It may or may not be. Which insect or arachnid would you be most comfortable waking up to crawling on your face?
A ladybug.
Yeah, I think that one's a good one. That's a good choice.
It's harmless.
You know what? I'll stick with that. Ladybug would be nice. They're not, you don't feel them. They're not goopy. It's
Butterflies.
Flick them off. A butterfly, a little butterfly.
Nothing that bites.
The big butterflies would be terrible. I'm not scared of bugs biting me. They're just gross and icky.
Pill bugs are cool. I like them. The roly polies, some people call
I wouldn't like it if it was crawling in my face. I would like poke it and make it turn into a little ball. I think that I have a decent amount of bravery in a lot of scenarios. Being around cockroaches is not one of those scenarios. I will squeal like a girl and like stand on the couch and freak out. I don't like scurrying. Random side note, and I think this is remotely relevant. I worked in the bar industry for a amount of time, and there was a cocktail waitress, and she, I assume, had a meth habit amongst other things. And so she was real twitchy, and she scurried when she moved places, and it made me very uncomfortable. So I'm anti-scurrying. Catie, if you had to wake up to some kind of bug or spider crawling on your face, what would you prefer it be?
I would prefer it be none.
No.
It's not one of the options, though.
I mean, I really couldn't answer that since I wouldn't like them to be any. I don't think I have a preference.
So the Gythia is refusing to answer your question, Robert.
I don't like bugs crawling on my face.
I don't either.
You just don't want to admit that ladybug is the perfect answer.
It is actually a really good answer. Nobody's scared of a ladybug.
If one were going to be, I would like to have the choice of which it could be, because there's options I would not prefer.
It was a great question, by the way.
Yeah, it's a fun question.
Oh. Okay, so we got kind of a duplicate on the question, but kind of not really. An addition to the last, what brand of power tools do you use? I'm a guy myself. He is an HVAC tech. I don't use power tools because I am not handy. What is your preferred power tool line, Cliff?
I have some Husqvarna, I have some DeWalt, but I'm not a specific loyalist on one. Price points are important to me a lot of times because I don't use them professionally. I use them as a homeowner and an automobile owner. So a lot of times it's about the price and if it's something I can use in a practical way as opposed to outsourcing it to a professional.
Catie, do you have a power tool preference?
I have always liked DeWalt. I like Ryobi sometimes. Husqvarna is nice. I use Dremel more than anything else, though. So I know it's kind of like an in-between power tool, but Dremels are pretty cool. I like them.
I have a lot more hand tools than power tools, honestly.
I would have more power tools if I could afford them.
So, random point that I guess is related. I've got a Husqvarna 30-06. Apparently in the 1970s, they made rifles as well. That was my grandfather's. It's the gun I shot my moose with. Next up, what would be a good offering to give a chemist's ancestor? My dad says Dr. Pepper, but I'm not sure on that one. And you may be getting conflicting advice tonight because it really depends on what angle you want to go at making offerings to your ancestors. I guess the point that I want to make is our ancestors are real people. And just as I've spoken about the gods being multifaceted and complete personalities, not just one thing, not just war or magic or the water. With your ancestors, that's true as well. Just because the guy happened to, clock in and clock out as a chemist doesn't mean that when he went home, he wouldn't prefer to have a sip of whiskey or a beer or something else. I don't think it had to be chemist themed per se. That said, it depends on what angle you're going at and what you know about the ancestor. Do they have a good sense of humor? Do they have a sweet tooth? Would they like a Dr. Pepper? Dr. Pepper's delicious, by the way. There's not a terribly wrong answer. The answer is the intention, why are you doing it? And if you're like, hey, great grandpa, I heard you like chemistry. I like Dr. Pepper. Here's to you. Cool. Then that's nice. If you're doing it to be silly, then it's not nice. And especially some of the And don't get me wrong, I'm that guy. Because I know some of my ancestors I'd make an offering to, you know, I would make an offering of something fast food or of a soda or this and that if I know that's what they like. The intention really makes everything. And the offerings get, you know, more and more, I guess, could be seen as cheesy by the outside observer when you deal with kids, but sometimes they're the most touching. Kids come up with some of the things that you would think are kind of like not a super high shelf offering, but that mean a lot because of the thought that a kid puts into it. And I've seen that be very touching with something like that. So it really depends. What do you think's a good offering for a chemist ancestor?
First, on the kids thing, I agree fully. Whenever one of my kids decides that they want to make an offering of like a piece of candy from their own Halloween or like Easter candy stash, that's a big deal for them. They're, you know, that's a valuable asset of which they have very few, so that means something. As far as Dr. Pepper being an offering for a chemist, I guess it would depend on why your father recommended it. If it's because this chemist was someone they knew in life and they know for a fact that they like Dr. Pepper, and it just happens to be that they're a chemist and that Dr. Pepper has the name doctor in it, then it's, you know, seems like a perfectly suitable offering. If it's sort of a pun because doctor and chemist, haha, then it might be disrespectful. But again, like Matt said, I don't know that somebody's trade necessarily defines them. Maybe this chemist's true passion was like collecting stamps or something. So it depends on what you know about them. And if you really don't know anything about them, then give them something that you like and just hope for the best. I mean that too, you know, assume that their taste is as good as yours.
And I'm not talking down to anybody. My first offering to Freya was, oh, Freya likes gold, so I will get a shot of Goldschlager, and she has cats, so here's some fancy feast. Like literally, as a grown man who was like 20 years old. So, but I meant it well. It was done in seriousness, and I feel like it was well received. I hope so. So it can be something simple or something cheesy or something whatever. The point is the intention. You've got to, you know, again, they're your ancestor. Maybe you know them. Maybe they were kind of a jerk and they wouldn't have a good sense of humor about it. I don't know. That's a little bit different. When you're dealing with the gods, you have to assume that they're the very best of people at the bare minimum and go from there. With your ancestors, not so much. You have a lot more empathy and you're in a lot more position to understand what your ancestor might like or might not, what their personality might be, what their flaws might be, something that, you know, they'd slap you upside the head about if you said in the same room with them. You know those little intricacies, or maybe, you know, or you have the opportunity to, some of us with some of our ancestors. So again, the details are what matters on that.
Yeah, and like Matt said, pay attention to the results. You know, if you're starting this as a gift cycle with this ancestor, you know, it's hopefully not a one-shot deal. Watch for the signals of whether they appreciated the gift or not, and try to improve on it. You know, just for kind of a silly comparison, you know, if you're courting a woman or taking a woman out and, you know, you discover that she prefers chocolate over flowers, then get her the chocolates.
And, you know, as a default, Cliff's suggestion that you know, offer something you like if you don't know anything else to do, I think that's a great place to start. I've always said any of our worship should start from empathy. And that may be an overextension of the word, but you're being able to relate to, well, if somebody was making me an offering, what would I want? You know, I think that's a great place to start with any relationship you have with, you know, any man, any animal, certainly any God, is to start for what would you like and work from there. I think that's how we relate to other beings as humans. I just think that's kind of what that's built upon at the most core level. Our next is kind of a comment from Vril Vanier. Missed you and the fam this weekend at Odenshoff, Matt. Hope you're feeling better. Feeling a lot better. Still coughing and dealing with a little bit of congestion, but feeling a lot better. I was really disappointed. I was very excited to go to the Hoff. I kept trying to tell myself on Friday that it was just allergies or just something because I had a cough, but I didn't really feel bad. But it hit me all really hard on Saturday. So we were all disappointed we couldn't come out and see you guys. We'll see you guys again, hopefully at Feast of the Iron Yard at Odenshoff. Allie asks, what are you snacking on this evening? I'll share your Goofy. I'm snacking on some Mike and Ike's Mega Mix, and they were delicious. They hit the spot. I had not eaten. I got to the airport early in Reno this morning, and I grabbed 3 McGriddles, and I ate those, and then I didn't eat again until, I don't know, 7 or so when I started scarfing down those Mike and Ike's. So they hit the spot.
I didn't know McGriddles were still a thing. I loved them when they first came out.
That's a genius idea. Which Asatru holiday does the AFA bloat to the male ancestors? Catie, you want to take this one?
Interestingly enough, Winter Nights is also traditionally used to celebrate the Alfar. We have traditionally, in the AFA, focused on the Disir, but I've been working in the last couple of years on bringing the Alfar into it more. That's one of the reasons why I asked Witan, Daniel, Young to actually have a Alfar bloat this year at our Winter Nights at Sipperheim, because I think if we're going to honor the Disir, we should make sure to honor our Alfar too. They're important. Our male ancestors are half of the equation. The Disir are the other half, so it only makes sense that we honor them both. And again, if you're going historically, there is proof of Winter Nights being used to honor Odin, Freyr, the Disir, and the Alfar. Those are the 4 that are most commonly associated with Winter Nights throughout history. So it kind of works out that way. But you should never really need a holiday to honor your Alfar or your Disir. We should honor them all the time, every day. Yep.
But the thing about the fall and on through Yule of the veils being thin and the distance between us and them being the closest, it's always a good season to do that for metaphysical, spiritual reasons, but also just for very practical, common sense. This is the time of year that you're coming together in your homes with your family. It's the holiday season, as it were. It's a time where celebration with friends and family indoors is much more of a part of our everyday life than at different times in the year. And it's important to try to include loved ones that have passed when you do that. It shouldn't just be a special ritual time. It should be that, and that's important. But it's also important to tell their stories and to talk about them and to welcome them into your home and your family and your life throughout the things that you do. And that's how their stories become internalized in your families. So it's important to keep them in mind that way. Out of curiosity, what is the AFA's opinion on perennialism across Indo-European faiths and broader world faiths? It's weird that you bring that up. That's something that Cliff and I were talking about on our drive from the airport here. To one degree or another. So, it's a big topic and it's nuanced. Certain things are perennial because they just happen to be things that are in common with human existence. So I don't necessarily find that religiously significant, but there's going to be overlaps with other groups of people because there's a lot of things that are just shared experience, as being various forms of earth fauna. Like, we deal with certain things that are similar all around. Religiously and very significantly to Asatru, what we do, Indo-European perennialism is based on a self-evident truth that we believe our gods shaped us and our existence. They have to be at least as old as our people, our race, our identifiable distinction as us. That being said, those gods predate the lore that we have about them, certainly in its current form. Those gods predate the names that our ancestors, our various ancestors, have assigned to them. But those gods are. Everything else flows from there, but they're not concepts or ideas, they're gods. And we have sought since the dawn of our race, and we still try to perfect to this day, our ability to know them best, to worship them best, and to forge the best relationship that we can with them. That relationship has looked very different to different branches of our folk throughout time, and throughout geography. In the AFA, we worship our gods under the names given to them and passed down to us through the Norse expression during the age of the Eddas and the age of the Sagas. That is the truth that has come to us most directly, and very specifically, that is, under those terms, was Asatru reinstated in the world around us. There was a moment in 1968 where our founder, Stephen McNallen, reached out to the Allfather, and the Allfather reached back. That moment is what this that we all do is predicated upon and built upon. That is the form that our gods made themselves known to our founder, Stephen McNallen. That is what has propelled us to where we are, and that is the nomenclature that we use going forward to evolve those relationships with our gods. And that may have sounded convoluted, and I hope that made sense to everybody. The cleanest way to put that, still working on, but hopefully that made some sense. Cliff, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think it's important to remember when we talk about our gods that our understanding is always imperfect. We can't really fully comprehend them. You know, we know a lot about Thor and other names that he may have been called by different different members of our people in different places in time and different places in space. But no matter what, we probably know less about Thor. We definitely know less about Thor than there is to know, and we always will. I think that we, can only really scratch the surface, even if we were to somehow successfully compile all of the knowledge of all of the Aryan peoples about the deity that we call Thor, just as an example, that would still be a fraction of everything that Thor is and everything that Thor is capable of and everything about, like, it's difficult to know our gods as people. We know that they are people in the sense that they are persons. Thank you, Matt. But there's always going to be things that we can't know, things that are godly knowledge, like what's it like at home for Thor and Sif? Like, we're not going to really ever get insight into that. And I don't think it's appropriate that we do. And it's just, I think, the reason I'm talking about this is I think it's important for us to come from a humble and pious place when we talk about our understanding of the gods. It's always going to be imperfect. It's always going to be limited. And that's true for us as individuals, and it's true for us as a people. Like, the full corpus of everything that any of our people has ever known about our gods is imperfect and small compared to what they actually are.
It's also really important to build our appreciation of lore and custom with that in mind. And this is where especially people who've been brought up in Christianity or Judaism or Islam they're functioning under a very different paradigm than we are. All of those faiths have a belief that there is a divinely inspired texts that tell them what to do, that are, written by Jehovah or Allah or whatever the case may be. That's not the case with our lore, and that's not the case with the lore of most religion in the history of the world, but it is very prevalent in the world that most of us were raised in. Our lore is a collection of understanding presented to us through generations by elders that have tried to reach out and understand our gods to the best of their ability, written down in language that communicates the best they can the truths that they discovered in doing that. Cliff and I were talking about this in the car too. There was no Thor didn't come down and talk to a Viking guy and say, "Hi, my name's Thor." The name evolved is the name that we assigned to that god as that god made himself manifest in our life and in our existence. There's no perfect nomenclature for our gods. Those were names that we assigned to them to reflect their personality and their magnificence. Looking at it that way, I think, is a more healthy way to approach it than otherwise. But our truth exists no matter to what degree we're aware of it or not. Our religious practice, our science, our attempts to understand the world and our gods are our attempts to reach up, to get closer to a better understanding of them. We're not assigning them things. The directionality of that stream is very important because they exist whether we know about them or not. And the greater truths of our existence exist whether we're aware of them or not, or regardless of how aware of them we are. All right, Matt, thoughts on push-pull legs? I've heard mixed opinions about it, but I like it. So if you're talking about separating, working out, your push muscles, I guess your calves and quadriceps on one day and your glutes and your hamstrings on a separate day, it depends. I think that's probably really good for women. I think women can tend to be successful working their legs more often than guys do. I usually in my split have all legs on one day. Sometimes I'll throw in an extra calf day throughout the week. But it just so happens the routine that I started 2 days ago is one where there's one day for quads, and the other, there's a day for quads by themselves, and there's another quads and calves, and there's another day that's basically my entire, all of the pull muscles, so my hamstrings, glutes, bicep, and back on a different day. So I don't know. I like changing it up every so often. I always stick to something for at least, 8 cycles of those days, depending on if it's a 4-day, 5-day split, whatever. But do 8 rounds of it before I change something else. But I think changing stuff up keeps your muscles guessing, and I think it also, makes it more fun and certainly keeps me more mentally engaged. Cliff, do you have any thoughts on leg splits?
Not particularly, other than that I have not had a proper exercise routine for years and should get back to such a thing. Can't say I never did, but it's been a while.
Fair enough.
I do remember when I was doing a lot more running, though, that incrementals are very important. So mixing it up and keeping your body guessing, of course, is, it has to do unexpected things in order to grow.
I think that similarly, my default is always to train, chest, shoulders, and triceps on one day and back and buys on a different day. But I think it was useful, and I like to, alternate. Sometimes I'll switch up the routine and do, chest and biceps, or I'll do triceps and back, or whatever to mix stuff up. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that within reason, but I do think that continually mixing it up is the right answer. Matt and Cliff, do you know any languages besides English? If not, what languages would you consider learning? Cliff, do you know any languages besides English?
Not well. I have very rusty Latin from a couple of years of classics that I took in high school. 1/4 of which would be 1/8 of the 2 years I took, was Greek. So that was all about just basically learning to draw the ancient Greek letters, which are a little different than the modern ones. But I can sometimes read things on like church walls and monuments. An Old Norse is one that I would like to learn. I'm a little bit behind some of our other Gothar in learning that, which is something we're working on. But something I have been interested in a long time. And having taken Latin, I can usually see German versus Latin roots in English and in other languages. Like if I see Dutch or Danish or something like that, I can usually pick out the common Germanic roots and get a very, very basic sense of like something. Like, oh, it's talking about bread. I don't know what about bread, but there's bread there, or something like that. And then sort of the converse with Latin-based languages like French or Italian or whatnot. But nope, can't speak it. It's been a long time since they made me read Gallic Wars in high school. So it was awesome, by the way. But yeah, no, not really.
Catie, do you speak any other languages?
I barely speak English.
Fair enough. So like Cliff, vocabulary, roots, etymology is important to me with a lot of stuff. I've done some Duolingo, their little Latin course that they had. I like to look into etymology, so I think that helps a lot of things and helps me piece out those basic vocabulary things like Cliff talked about. I've learned a little bit of Spanish here and there because it's so common. I was going there for a while, going pretty hard on the Duolingo on German, And it was cool when I talked to some German speakers and I could converse like a German kindergartner or first grader, perhaps. Like I could get some really basic stuff figured out. But yeah, that was fun. So I can speak like a small child in German. I think that's the closest that I've come, but I think it's really interesting. As Cliff mentioned, our Gothar are studying Old Norse, not necessarily to be fluent speakers, but because the etymology is really important and the vocabulary is important. Understanding the roots helps a lot to add a great amount of depth to our lore. So it's the best that I've got on that. We're getting a lot of random questions tonight. While we're giving simple fun questions, what's your favorite color? Catie, what's your favorite color?
Green.
Cliff, what's your favorite color?
Green and blue, because I'm complicated.
You know, I don't know. As a kid, red. The older I get, like a deeper blood red or like a more burgundy kind of reddish colors tends to be my favorite. What would you do if you had a time machine that could take you anywhen, but only for 24 hours? Random questions. Okay. Catie.
I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't know if I could choose just one thing. That ended up being.
You only got to be there for 24 hours.
I know. But there's so many places I would want to go. I don't know if I could choose just one. I'll have to think about that one for a minute.
All right, Cliff.
Well, assuming this time machine has like some kind of safety mechanism where it's going to insulate me from the surroundings of where I go to, I want to go and see the fire and ice mixing in the Mugat.
I'm hoping that the time machine could take me to some place as well, because I think, you know, sitting here and there would not be a lot to do here in central Tennessee if I went back to some of the time frames that I would like to go back to. Man, I don't know. See, you guys mess up when you ask these very broad questions because I go over in my head and I start intricately debating what's the right answer on some of these things. I mean, I don't know, as most of us who would be interested in this podcast, most people in the AFA, and certainly most of our Gothar, I love history. There's so many different times and places that it would be awesome to go. And I think the spirit of the question is something like that, but I'm sitting here with the practicality of, yeah, but would they speak the same language? I couldn't pick up on what they're saying because I don't speak that dialect. Man, it'd be cool to be here, but you know, I look out of place and they might kill me. I don't. Okay, so let's assume it can't take me anyplace else. And I have to be here in central Tennessee where I'm sitting, and Shoutout takes me back. I would like to go to the very early days of the Civil War. Like, pretty early, because this part of Tennessee got overrun by Yankees pretty quick. but I think it would be really interesting. I think that people are close enough to us where conversation would not be a problem. And it would be a time where behavioral expectations for people was so much higher, where the average person that I would meet would be so much better mannered. And it's just kind of a special time in our history where it's not so remote to be foreign, but it's so many beautiful things that have retreated from common practice amongst our folk. We're still very much expected at that time and celebrated. And I think that the dignity of our people during that time period was really remarkable. And I think that would be reasonable, practical, not add on any more to your scenario than is implied in it. And I think it'd be kind of nice.
I have an answer.
Did you figure yours out, Katie?
Yeah.
All
So,
right.
assuming that we could travel to as well as when, I would want to visit some of my distant Irish ancestors because I don't know very much about them. It'd be cool to learn. If we have to stay where we are, I prefer the French Indian War / early stage Revolutionary Wars period of time, but I don't really want to meet the people. I'd really, really like to just see the face of this place before human hands changed everything. Like, imagine what Niagara Falls looked like before they fucking, pardon my language, I'm sorry, before they like chopped everything down and built a whole city right along the edge of it. You know what I mean? I think that'd be amazing. And if it can't be Niagara Falls, because that's close to where I live when I'm not in Tennessee, any other, just to see what it would look like without all the roads and the buildings and the people involved. I'd be okay with that. And also less chances of being, murdered by people. Except for Indians. They probably would murder me.
All right, there you have it. We have some more Asatru related questions coming up for those of you that may not be aware, but this is a night for some of the more random questions. If you could hang out and drink a beer with one celebrity, dead or alive, who would it be? Cliff.
There are plenty that would be quite entertaining, but I think just I think I'm going to go with Mel Gibson. It's got to be more than one beer, though. Get him talking,
Mel Gibson, huh?
He knows stuff.
What about you, Katie?
I don't know. What kind of a celebrity does it have to be? Does it have to be like a Hollywood celebrity, or can it be like a historical celebrity? Because that changes the whole
Well,
game.
I think that they would have said historical person as opposed to celebrity. That's what was going on in my head, because I was thinking along those lines too. So let's keep it pop culture. But it can be old timey if you want.
Robin Williams.
See, now you got me overthinking again.
Are you going to impose additional restrictions on yourself like you did with the time machine?
No, I mean, I just be a historical figure. It has to be somebody that, the use of the term celebrity, I think, is significant. See, that's why we get a lot of dead airs. You make me think too hard on some of these questions.
It's not that hard. Just pick something fun.
It's hard. I could pull something random. Honestly, you know what? I genuinely think it'd be fun to have a beer with John Wayne. I think that'd be interesting. I think that we could agree on enough stuff that it wouldn't be odd. And I think he probably has a lot of really interesting stories being involved in movies for over 40 years. So I'm gonna go with that. All right. Is there a horror movie or some other Halloween related film you guys like to watch around Halloween? Catie?
I'm a girl. Of course there's a Halloween movie or something around Halloween I'd like to watch. So I'm a big fan of Hocus Pocus from when I was little. That's a good movie. Practical Magic, but that's kind of an always movie. I'm just generally a really big horror movie fan in general, so I'm watching them pretty much all the time, not just at Halloween. So it'd be hard to choose a specific horror movie. But yeah, probably Hocus Pocus and Practical Magic are the two best.
What about you, Cliff?
I'm a child of the 80s, so I like the Freddy Krueger movies. I like Hellraiser movies. Critters was awesome. And then as far as movies that are a little bit older than that, like Hitchcock movies are always great. And just for the comic value, Kingdom of the Spiders, starring William Shatner, is one of the best movies ever made.
Sounds amazing. So, no, because I don't like watching things more than once. I'm not that guy. There's lots of people that, like the question assumes lots of people have like, every time around this time of year, I like to watch this. I don't. Once I've seen a movie, I like to watch something new and different. So I don't really have a go-to. I like movies that are scary, but I don't like movies that are just gory to see how gory they could be. And that's a lot of horror movies. So I don't mind this.
Really horror movies though.
They're under the horror category, and Amazon Prime says that they're horror movies. And it also says they're movies I would like to watch, and it is incorrect. So agreed. I think that I want my horror movies to be a little bit higher brow than that.
Like Kingdom of the Spiders.
I've yet to enjoy that particular offering.
I'm gonna pop in, and I just want to say that gore movies are not horror movies. Horror movies have to be scary because they make you sit and wait and wonder. It's like the psychological aspect of the horror movie is what makes it scary. And occasionally the jump, but too many movies just do the jump like 50,000 times, and then it just becomes boring.
Agreed.
Sorry. I feel strongly about this.
Okay.
Also, Gremlins is a Christmas movie. I just thought I should put that in there.
All right, this one's, again, going back to, I guess, briefly touching on the subject of the program, which is Asatru. If you could convert any famous person into Asatru, who would it be? Cliff.
All right, so trying to think of return on investment here. That's what I care about in this whole situation. So it needs to be somebody people actually take seriously. Otherwise, it's just, a footnote on their zaniness.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah, no, see, that's.
I'm
I
joking.
picked him because he was fun. He doesn't meet the criteria for this one.
No. He's already a little too
Zany.
crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so this is probably not quite where people are thinking, but as far as the impact it would actually have on our folk in the world, King Charles III.
Explain your reasoning.
Well, he's the head of the Anglican Church and the King of England and the King of Great Britain. If he actually converted to Asatru for real and had a sincere conversion, I think it might change the course of the Western world. Because, I mean, enough people take him seriously. I know that the British monarchy is not necessarily an institution everyone puts a lot of stock into, including myself, but it is still a legitimate monarchy. And I think as far as the actual impact on bringing additional people to Asatru, that a proper monarch would probably be the best.
So I was going to say Emperor Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire. At that point, he was the Habsburg emperor. He had the biggest stretch of any European emperor ever as far as land under his authority. If he openly was able to do that, a significant enough chunk of Europe and the New World was under his control, that could have set our people on a different course at a time when a lot of things were changing, when there was still the battle betwixt Catholic and Protestant over the spiritual destiny of our folk. I think throwing in that much landed power with an Asatru emperor would have been, that could have given people a third option at a time that may have made a lot of difference.
We could pick dead people.
You said famous. If it was a celebrity, then I would have gone, I don't know. So I suppose the arbiter, you said famous. I suppose the arbiter of that question is Finn Wraith. So Finn, in the comments, I haven't even looked at the comments in a long time, so hopefully you guys haven't been saying cool stuff to us.
Or cruel.
I mean, I hope you have been saying cool stuff. I just feel bad if I've been missing it. Anyways, I'll continue to miss it because it's awkward leaning over. This is the setup we got this week. Do either of you like cigars?
Yes.
You have any more to add on your cigar preferences?
Inexpensive.
Catie, you like cigars?
No.
All right. I enjoy a cigar as well. I have to go with Cliff. Best cigar is a cigar that someone hands me. First, I think that's a good rule of thumb altogether on most of the things. But when it comes to cigars and wine, and I guess beer for that matter, expensive isn't always better to me. People with supposedly much more advanced palates than mine pick out notes of cherry and a hickory finish and like all these different. I can't pick those things out. The flavor in it has to hit me in the face. It has to be very noticeable for me to pick up on it. It's like I was reading a reviews of Kirkland brand spice rum. Kirkland spice rum is my favorite spice rum. And they complain that it's way too strong, it's way overspiced, and somebody described it. It's like drinking a drunken gingerbread man. That's exactly what I want from my spiced rum. More of that, please. Same goes with cigars. You'll read all these fancy descriptions, but I really don't notice that. I notice if they are strong or if they're mild. People describe them as being spicy or not. I don't know if I pick up on that so much. I like smooth. And I've found not only is it cool, but I think it helps with the flavor to me. Trying to think of how they described it on the little deal again, because we like the cheap cigars. I was at an ABC Liquor in St. Augustine, Florida, and they had, real cheap cigars in this container by the door. And one of my favorite ones I ever smoked was, it says billowy white smoke. Okay, so I got it. It was super smooth. It was the most ridiculous, like clouds of cigar smoke when I was smoking it. But it's my favorite one I've ever had, and I wish I could figure out what it was or have it again. But yes, I do enjoy a cigar from time to time. Kind of a interesting side note on cigars. They help me meditate and they help me read. If I'm trying to read something spiritual or something that's really important that I want to focus on, or if I'm trying to meditate about something important or something spiritual, cigars put me in a place where I can receive that better. And I think one of the reasons is I'm taking in less oxygen because of how you've got to breathe to smoke a cigar. So I think it's slowing a lot of my body processes down a little bit, and it slows it down enough that I feel like I can more fully absorb the information that I'm trying to. So cigars a lot of the time will put me in a little bit more meditative space, headspace, that is.
My cigar palate is also not robust, but as a former cigarette smoker, all cigars are superior to cigarettes. So there you go.
So that's the thing. I never noticed any kind of a nicotine deal. I've got a really strong tolerance on a lot of stuff. Fortunately, I don't have an addictive personality, or I haven't discovered that with anything so far. So it's not like I need to, or I need the nicotine or whatever. It's more the experience. Something with the aroma just triggers stuff in my head. I don't encourage people to smoke cigarettes. I don't think that's necessarily a healthy thing to do. But, and I'm 42. I think people much younger than that may not get this, but the smell of tobacco smoke takes me back to my childhood a lot. Makes me think about my grandpa, and honestly, it makes me think about being a kid in the 1980s. You'd go to the restaurant and they'd have this little frosted glass thing like this high on top of the back of the seat, and that separated smoking from non-smoking section of the restaurant. But something about that just makes me think of going places with my grandparents, and it just kind of takes me back to a different time.
You remember the every person who would have company over that was respectable, whether they smoked or not, they would all have like the ashtrays for company. Mm-hmm. My mom had a set of like crystal ashtrays that would get broken out whenever aunts or uncles or neighbors, any of like my birthday parties as a kid, would break out the ashtrays because people are coming and they're bringing gifts. So that means they can smoke in the house, even though we don't smoke. It's just how it was. And well, I don't encourage smoking. I do miss some of the culture of that time where not everybody just wasn't up in people's faces about the personal business like they are now.
And everything just wasn't so fragile. Yep. Okay. One of the interesting dynamics of this show is because so much of it is driven by questions from a variety of people, from a variety of sources, just as they come. The topics of conversation shift pretty quick. My great-grandmother was abandoned by my biological great-grandfather and grandmother. Mom and my generations all knew the step-great-grandfather. I love my grandpa Ryder, but I'm not sure how to approach my Halsteads, both the man in question and that branch as a whole. So is the question, okay, I'm not sure if I follow the question, and it can go one of two ways, and I think that either of those are worth pursuing. So either I'm understanding that you want to honor the line of your ancestors, that, you know, one particular coupling from abandoned your grandmother, your great-grandmother, or you're wondering how to honor your step-grandparents that were a significant part of your life, if I'm understanding that question right. Or your step-great-grandparents, rather. Are you understanding this question any better than I am, Cliff?
I think you have it.
Okay.
I mean, it could be either one.
All right, so if that's the case, first, one question that we get a lot, and again, I'm deviating from the original guy asking the question. I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability, but I think it's useful for a lot of other people to have. I think this is something a lot of people think about. I know a lot of folks get stuck on one particular ancestor or one particular generation of ancestor that have done terrible things or have wronged them personally or have been not worthy of a lot of honor. And I think that that sometimes alienates a person from, you know, statistically a massive percentage of their ancestors. And that's really unfortunate. I think it's really important to think past that particular branch in the tree or that particular, you know, link in the chain, as it were. That person, if you have one ancestor that did you wrong, maybe they did something completely and totally terrible to you or to your parents or whatever the case may be. That person's side, that person had two parents that aren't necessarily at all culpable in any of that person's wrongdoing. That person had four grandparents that are even less culpable for whatever the decisions this person made. 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents. It gets exponential very quickly of amazing people that are all part of what brought you to this place in this time and are all worthy of respect and getting to know at the very least, if you can, and more than likely of honoring in a significant way. And so I, do whatever you need to bypass someone that you don't feel comfortable honoring for cause. But don't let that just happen. You know, had a child and made a bad choice. But also in Asatru, because we are folkish, we are necessarily connected to specific blood ancestry as part of our connection to the gods. But we also honor heroes. We honor important people in our lives and people that we care about of our folk. They're all part of that river of our people that goes back to the beginning. And maybe they're not literal blood kin of yours, but it's still very, very appropriate to honor those people and to celebrate them, just like it would be to, you know, any of the heroes that we celebrate or any of your friends or people that mean a lot to you in,
the third round ensemble, someone doesn't have to be blood kin of yours for you to reach out to and honor them from this side of the veil. And I think that's important to consider as well. They may not be directly blood related to you, but assuming that they're part of our folk, it's still appropriate to honor them in an Asatru fashion. And I think that's, I wouldn't let anything, hold you back from doing that if you feel like that's something important to do, and if you, have that relationship with them. What are your thoughts on this, Gythia?
So I tell the story relatively often. Some of you may have already heard it before. My son is 5, and he was born into Asatru, and he has very little concept of anything else. And 3 years ago now, at O-Star in the South, he sat and played with an older gentleman named Terry Rump for about 30 minutes, maybe on a picnic bench. Terry was a wonderful dude. He passed away not too long after that, and my son, to this day, still hails Terry Rump during the Ancestral ensemble. I don't know how he still even remembers that name, but he does. And I tell that story because I think children are the very purest version of us. My son doesn't have any concept of what he. He understands in a much more intuitive, on a much more intuitive level than we do. That Terry Rump is somebody worth remembering, and he does it. So I use that example because my kid knows better than we do sometimes, I think, because he gets it on a different level. But yeah, you can hail people who you're not related to. Terry Rump is a hero to my son for whatever reason, and that's a good enough reason for me to always encourage him to say that name in something. And it should be a good enough reason for all of us to raise a horn to somebody.
Yeah, thoughts, Cliff?
Well, I think my lovely wife just underscored why it's important to say the names of people that we hail. I think that the reason our son Owen remembers Terry when he's 5 is because he's been saying his name and keeping that memory alive, which is something he initiated when, gosh, what was he, 2 when he first did that, babe? Something like that?
Yep. Maybe 3, but
maybe just barely 3, yeah. But he made a choice to do that, and then it became almost his own personal tradition. So I don't think he would remember Terry at all if he hadn't done that. And it was his idea, and of course we encouraged it because it's a great idea. But that's one of the reasons why we say people's names, because it does help to keep them alive, both inside us and I think outside of us as well. As far as uncomfortable ancestors, people who have not been the most honorable, or maybe who are just dastardly people, maybe they were evil, I mean, if we consider all the people who ever were our ancestors to the beginning of time, I'm sure we all have murderers and rapists of some kind of in our history. If you go all the way back to prehistory and pre-civilization and the Stone Age, there's going to be some people who did some bad stuff that we need to approach with respect because we owe our lives to them. Every single ancestor that we have matters. And none of them are perfect. Some of them, by our standards today, are going to be less perfect. But I think it's important to know that, or to recognize that we're projecting certain standards on some of these people. I don't know the specifics about the person who abandoned their child and what the circumstances might be. And it may not apply. Maybe you specifically know that there's no good reason for that. But it might be worth giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there was a good reason that you just don't know about, and that the family remembers them in a poor light because they were angry, but that there could be another point of view that hasn't been retold through time. And even if they were totally wrong, as I mentioned, we owe our lives to every single one of our ancestors who ever existed. And sometimes they're wrong that maybe brought us to be able to be here, or, they're inaction. We always talk about doing right and taking right action. But I mean, I think a fact of the matter is that in some, we are also the result of all of our ancestors' mistakes. So approaching them with respect and with, I think, forgiveness is important. And I don't mean Christian forgiveness. This isn't just like, I absolve you of your sins because I'm in some holier than thou position. I mean forgiveness is in giving a gift that isn't deserved. Yeah. Giving it in advance to forgive, like F-O-R-E, give. And if we do that, if we, approach them with respect and give them the benefit of the doubt and, make that first move, like, I'm going to give you a gift that I don't think you deserve and see what happens. I think the worst is that could happen is that you're, putting a little bit of energy out there that you're not going to get back. The best that could happen is that you build a relationship with an ancestor that you might have otherwise neglected. And that could also mean that you build a relationship with a whole ancestral line that you might have otherwise neglected. People see this in their families that are still living all the time. Parent has a feud with an in-law, and the next thing you know, the two parts of the families haven't talked for decades, and you've got, grandkids who don't know their aunts and uncles, and it's I think something worth putting yourself out there for. And as far as the adoptive parents, the step parents of the grandmother in question, as Matt mentioned, they're heroes for doing that act, for taking on the responsibilities that were either neglected or not able to be taken on by the biological parents. And that is a great reason to honor those people. But yeah, I think, how are we going to be judged by our descendants, and especially our descendants who are more distant, that don't know all the nuances of our personalities and of the details in our lives? Because every generation that goes by, no matter how well our story is retold, it's going to get fuzzier and fuzzier. I think we owe the people that came before us the same sort of deference that we would hope that people give us one day, to look at us in the best light possible and to assume that there's context, even if we don't know the details of it.
Other thing I think is kind of an important side note, there is a difference between full-throated celebration of someone and acknowledgement of someone. And I think that there's a case to be made for some ancestors that are, have a less than amazing reputation, to acknowledge them respectfully. I think that case is to be made. Now, I'm not saying that's the case in every situation. I don't know the depth of what they did or didn't do, but there's an area there of appropriate acknowledging one of your ancestors that comes a little bit short of, saying their praises. And I think that's something to consider also. And I'm not trying to screw around on my phone, guys. We've got Gythia Young that we mentioned earlier. He's actually coming into this Airbnb later tonight, so I'm kind of checking on some progress stuff with him. And it's also how I'm able to find the questions that Nick feeds me. Usually it's a much tighter close-up on me on the camera, so you don't see all the strings. Ron McVan proposes the idea in his book Creed of Iron that Mimir was the high god during the Hyperborean times, and then was later replaced by Tyr, and then finally by Odin. Not sure where he got this information from, but wanted to know your thoughts. I think it is. I think some of that is built on some valid observation, some valid truths as the chronology of things. Mimir is a very old god. That's part of the fundamentals of his essence, is that wealth of knowledge and wealth of memory. His position with in the hierarchy of things puts him, amongst the gods and in mythic time as being notably, old and wise. I think that when you look at the archaeological record and things, certainly Tyr was a god of much greater prominence earlier in our people's history, our recorded history, and over time, in the way that our people were converted and the way that our faith developed, Odin tended to take a more prominent role, specifically in Scandinavia, at a later period. So I see a logic to positing them as high gods in 3 different epochs of time. But I think a lot of that is very, very speculatory and trying to, put a nice bow on it. And I think that's an interesting way for Ron McMahon to look at it, and an interesting theory, but I don't put a lot of stock in that. As I was saying earlier in the show, truth exists because it does. The gods exist because they do. They exist the way they do, regardless of our understanding of them. As we grow in understanding, hopefully we get closer to understanding those mysteries. But I don't think that tracking the number of worship sites or times a god's name is used in an inscription, specifically when talking about a sequence between Tyr and Odin, tracking the archaeology of when certain people worship them more or less, I don't think necessarily speaks to the truth of their divine existence. I think it speaks much more to trends amongst our folk and amongst geography on where they placed a lot of their emphasis. And I think you see that in different ways regionally as we get into the more typical Viking Age period. You see, for instance, in Sweden, you see a cult of Frey that's certainly much more prominent than you see in other Scandinavian places and in other lands. You see him being their god of regality, whereas that typically at that time period was the domain of Odin. And I think that speaks more towards that tribe and their development than it does to the position of the gods in Asgard. Cliff, do you know any more about Ron's theory on that? Maybe any validity to it, or where it came from, or why it be like it is?
Don't know that much about Ron's theory on it, but I have thoughts on it myself. I think that the expanse of time between Adumla and Ymir to the Aesir is vast. And, you know, I mean, typically people call the entities that exist in this time Jotuns, but I don't think that's quite accurate. I think that they're probably better referred to as boot garters from the perspective of the Aesir, because the Vanir are among them. Their whole history that is really not very well known to us at all exists somewhere in this space in mythic time. Odin's own lineage exists in this space in mythic time, and we have little bits of it, but I would suggest that there's probably more. And that somewhere in there, Mimir exists and was a wise old Utgarder or Jotun with a lowercase j, not a descendant of Bergelmir, but of all the giants, as in, you know, the great ones that existed in that time before the Aesir brought order and created Midgard and the things that set our understanding of the world into motion. I have a similar thought on the vulva in Voluspa. If Odin can raise from the dead some old woman who's going to then tell him the history of all the things that came before, presumably before Odin, then this vast expanse of time must exist, and this deceased woman who he raised up must have existed in that time and knows things which she can relate to him.
No, I'm looking. Something strange just happened with our camera, and I don't.
I raised my hand and it caught the camera's
Aha.
attention. Raise your hand to see what it does. No?
Oh,
I don't
it's
know. I was
It was your ancestors from
Yes.
beyond the grave.
but I think, you know, what I was talking about though, there is a lot of stuff that came before the Aesir that we have very little information of, but that Voluspa alludes to and that Mimir was part of. And so I think, you know, I don't think that either of those two entities was an Aesir, so I don't know that I would call them gods per se. But certainly they were entities of great power, similar to our gods, but predating them. And I think a lot of that's just going to remain a mystery to us because we exist in Midgard and in the, you know, the order of the universe that was created from the slaying of Ymir and the building of our world. And really to imagine what came before that is, it's a fun topic. I love to talk about this stuff, but there's never, I don't think, you can always correct me if I'm wrong, you know, sure you go through, but I don't think there's going to be a specific AFA or Asatru position on these things because they're unknowable. You know, kind of in a way from a scientific perspective, when you talk about before the Big Bang, like there was such a thing, but knowing it is virtually impossible, at least with the information and the tools we have now.
Yeah, I don't mean to, you know, criticize it over much. Like I said, I think there's a truth there to the great antiquity of Mimir and the myth cycles, but I don't think there's evidence or reason for us to reshuffle our understanding of the hierarchy of the gods because of it. I don't think there's anything definitive that way. All right, another silly question. If you were an aquatic mammal, what aquatic mammal would you be?
Manatee mammals.
Is that your official answer?
Yeah,
You would be a manatee.
I like manatees.
Stay away from the boat motors.
Yeah,
So you, Cliff.
they didn't work over there.
I mean, it's not a serious question, so I am the walrus. Cuckoo,
That was clever.
Thank you.
That's clever. Oh, I don't know if it counts as aquatic, but I'm going to say polar bear. They spend lots of their time in the water, underwater. We'll see if it counts. If it doesn't, an orca. Do you like to read any horror around Halloween? I have never read. I don't read fiction very often at all. I mean, I don't read fiction. There have been a couple of times in my life, but in general, that's just not what I read. I don't think I've ever read a work of horror. Cliff, do you like to read horror around this time of year?
No, not particularly. I also don't read hardly any fiction. I think I read an abridged version of Dracula once, an abridged version of Frankenstein, and in grade school, I once read this book. It was scary.
No spoilers. Our audience may want to dig into that. Catie, do you like to read horror in general or around this time of year?
First, I have to say, if you read the abridged versions, you didn't really read them.
I know.
So
That's why I specified. Yeah, well,
did you specify?
I said abridged, so.
I don't stick to the time of year, and since I've had children, I have read almost nothing except for a couple of books I had to read during my other studies, like Christianization of early Germanic, whatever. I don't remember the name. Really? What's the name of the book again? I'm sorry, guys. It's tired. It's late and I'm tired.
So it's 4-2 at that. We're going to answer this last question, and then you're going to get set up with whatever we might need to get set up so that we're ready to start bright and early in the AM, because we got people showing up tomorrow and leadership showing up to do some last minute prep stuff tomorrow. But this is a good question, I think, to end on. In the spirit of winter nights, pun intended, do you three have a nice story of an ancestor you'd like to share with us? I think that we all do. And Catie, would you like to share an ancestor story with us?
So I'll stick with the one I tell pretty often when I think of it, because it's the easiest. My grandmother, my mom's mom, Mary Alice McBrady, when my oldest brother was like 3 or 4 years old, he was 2 or 3. He was told to, or not told, but he was naming everybody around the dinner table. All my aunts, all my uncles, my mom, my dad, giving them all names. When he got to my grandmother, he said Mop. So my grandmother has forever been known as Mop, which is the most unglorious name, but she seemed to not mind it because, like I said, that's what we all called her forever. All of my cousins called her Mop too. She was just Mop. So, Mop.
Thank you. Cliff, do you have a story about ancestors?
Sure. My grandpa, Harvey Erickson, was primarily a farmer. He also was a machinist and served in the military, but he was a farmer, and he had moved from the Dakotas to the East Coast during the Second Great War, and ended up moving back to South Dakota in his later years, basically, to go home at the end of his life. And he lived for another decade or so there, and was farming again. He hadn't done that for a long time, and it made him happy. And we went out to visit him. So the family, we did a road trip out there, and one of the things that we did is me and my brother went to go out to the fields with them and see what he was, basically to go for tractor rides. And my grandfather was always someone that I looked at as a pillar of virtue. He was a stalwart man, all of these things that I think a lot of us may think about our grandparents. And as I climbed up into the tractor cab to go on this tractor ride with him, I look up and there's this girly picture, this lady in a bikini hanging up there. He goes, oh, and he didn't realize, it didn't quite dawn on him to take that down before his 8-year-old, 9-year-old grandson was coming up there. And no, it was funny. It wasn't a nudie picture, just to be clear. It was a girly picture, like you might see in like a mechanic shop or something. But it helped me see the man in a different light, as a man, a regular man, just like the rest of us who like pretty ladies. So that's my story about Grandpa Harvey.
I get overthinking on stuff, and I'm trying to think of a particularly memorable or clever story about one of my ancestors. And I don't know that I have one off the top of my head. I've got a lot of, it's funny the things that you remember and the things that stand out. I don't know if it's a cute or clever story or not, but one thing that I remembered a lot, and I was really fortunate to experience growing up, was my mother's parents, my grandma, Mary Ann Davis, and my grandfather, Aubrey Allen Davis, who named my daughter after. They had with some of my grandpa's, 2 of his buddies, they had this like 1/3 share in this fishing lot on the Kenai River. And they'd go down there, and anybody who is unfamiliar, the Kenai River in Alaska is one of the best red salmon, specifically, fisheries in the world. That and the Copper River up there are probably the best red salmon you can get. And they would fly fish get some hip boots on and go out and fly fish right off the lot. It was a great spot. I just remember as time would go on, my grandma was uncanny with it. There was a limit of typically of three a day when the run was on. There'd be like 3 salmon per person a day. So there'd be guys out there all day trying to fly fishing and get close. And, maybe they'd get their limit, maybe they wouldn't. She could go out there, she wouldn't be out there an hour. And much to the consternation of everybody else around her trying to fish, she just had the right touch with it or whatever, fly fishing. But she was really an amazing fisherwoman at that. And it was interesting because like I said, my uncle, my dad would be out there, my grandpa would be out there, any number of friends and others to get there because nobody really owned the river. So you could walk up once you're out in the water to other people's spots and fish. But she'd knock out her 3 like it was nothing. But I remember one time, seemed more interesting as a kid. It's really I'm glad it didn't hurt her and permanently disfigure her as an adult, but it was humorous to me when I was a little kid. She had one salmon on, and for whatever reason, the line broke, and it all came coming back at her. And she had this very distinct outline of this fishing line, like imprinted on her face for the better part of the rest of the day. She was fine. I just remember that as a kid because she had these now the word's not coming to me. She had these special sunglasses where she could kind of see in the water a little bit where salmon were, where fish were, polarized lenses. And yeah, there was like this outline that mysteriously, wasn't where the glasses shape were. But I remember that. That was one morning when she was out for like 20 minutes and got all 3 of her salmon. But yeah, I was really lucky to get to spend a lot of time with those grandparents and get to know them really well. Thank you guys so much for bearing with the various difficulties tonight and kind of a little bit more laid back episode. It's been great talking to you guys. It's cool to do this for the first time kind of on the road and, with my guests in the same room as me, so it's been pretty cool.
Victory never sleeps on the couch.
I know we're innovating, but no, it's been great to talk to you guys. Great to spend a little bit of time with the Ericksons, and I'm excited for the amazing event that we got ahead of us in the next few days here. Remember, if you can, get out here, come join us, experience the glory that is Sigerheim. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember, victory never sleeps.